Alright, locking, because today we're going to be reading every episode of the Beyblade Metal Fight series. This video, this part, focusing on Beyblade Metal Fusion. Now, instead of making a messy ranked list where I jump around splitting hairs, I'm rating every episode in order, like it's grade school. Each one's getting a letter grade, A through F. Here's how it'll go. I'll recap every episode, break down what I like and didn't like, then give it a final grade. But I'm also going to sprinkle in some real life stories whenever a certain Beyblade brings back a memory, because let's be honest, Beyblade wasn't just an anime, it was a phenomenon. 90s kids had Pokemon, 2000s kids, we had the Beyblade Metal Saga, and somewhere in between there was Bakugan. Also, one quick thing before we jump in here, I won't be using B-roll clips this time. I've had videos blocked before and I'd rather this one stay up and reach as many people as possible, so instead we're rolling with stills, but soon I'm planning on making shorter Beyblade videos and that's where I'll experiment with B-roll. This video took a long time to make, so grab a snack, settle in, and let's relive the chaos, the nostalgia, and the battles that made Beyblade Metal Fusion what it is. Time to get in here, let's go. Episode 1, Pegasus Has Landed. This episode is supposed to set up the world, just like every episode 1 in every TV show ever. It's the start of the Pegasus Has Landed arc, or the Metal Bay City arc. Every arc gets a name. It's easier to split the show up and talk about it in arcs. But the names of these arcs aren't original, I didn't come up with them. Shout out to Wildfang Edits, a channel that ranked the top bladers from every arc, so that's where I got the arc names from. Alright, so getting into the show, we get to meet Kenta Yumiya, one of the main characters, and he's competing in this Beyblade tournament trying to earn some Bay points. These Bay points are going to have a use later, but before that event, I always wondered, like, what were these points for? Like currency or like just for show? Like for fun, I guess? I don't know, but like that is something that I always wondered. Anyways, simultaneously, the main character, Gingka Hagane, which after all of this time, I'm just now finding out that his name isn't Gingka, it's Gingka, but I'll just go with Gingka since like that's familiar, like that's what they decided to go with in the English dub, so like yeah. But yeah, while this was happening, Gingka enters the Metal Bay City and later on saves Kenta from Benkei Hanawa and the Face Hunters, which made the boss man upset, and that'll come into play later. They're like a gang that goes around challenging kids, trying to get some easy points off them, which again, would be nice to know the significance of these points, like why everyone wants them so much. But yeah, it's clear from this battle that Gingka is goated. He and his Pegasus are so much stronger than everyone else with their stock Beyblades, and he's even stronger than Kenta, who has a Sagittario. Because of this, Gingka and Kenta bonded, and like Kenta wanted to learn from Gingka, and like we learned that Gingka isn't from here. He's traveling around the world trying to battle strong bladers and become the strongest blader or whatever. The next day, however, when Kenta wanted to learn more from Gingka, Gingka actually got kidnapped by the Face Hunters and had to beat 100 bays, which he did easily, and that actually impressed the leader of this gang, Kyoya Tetagami, because he finally found a worthy opponent, and the episode ends with that. I'm gonna give this episode an A grade. I would say that the battles left a lot to be desired, but like that's understandable since we were following Kenta in this tournament with a bunch of like lower level bladers than Gingka and Kyoya, so like it's understandable why the battles outside of the 100 Bay battle were kind of lacking. But as a first like pilot episode, it's perfect, like it's everything that I could have wanted. Obviously, more explanation of the Bay points would have been nice, but like it set up the world nicely, especially giving the main characters like a Face Hunters group and Kyoya to go up against, like have a rival or antagonist to go up against in the future, just adding a sense of danger and intrigue to this world. Although Gingka steamrolled the battles in this episode and established himself as an OP character, not gonna lie, I like how Kyoya is set up as a threat for the next episode, and like that's where they left it off. So I really don't have much more to say about this episode. It wasn't the most exciting, like action-packed episode ever, like what's to come, but it's a good setup for the series, earning it an A grade. Episode 2, Leon's Roar. In episode 2, they're really gonna set up two characters. We're gonna get to learn a lot more about Kyoya, more than in the first episode, like he's gonna have more involvement. Then they're gonna set up Madoka Amano, a mechanic. So basically, Gingka decided to stay around in the Metal Bay City because he likes it after meeting some of Kenta's friends, and he found an opponent in Kyoya that he would like to battle. But Kenta warned him against it because up to this point in the series, Kyoya is the most formidable blader. Like, he's talked up as this absolutely brutal opponent. So I would guess that he's been in the Metal Bay City for a while, and like, he's probably never lost, especially looking at the competition. Like, everyone has stock Beyblades and the face hunters challenge kids. Like, there's no way bro isn't undefeated. While they were talking about this stuff, Madoka snuck up on them and started inspecting Pegasus because it was roughed up or like scratched up or whatever. So like, she kind of just demanded that Gingka stop battling so she could treat its injuries. Okay, like, that's quite a way to make an introduction. Perfect way to make friends, but like, they kind of just went along with it. You following me? Whenever I watched this, like years back, I never noticed that Madoka's like catchphrase or like common saying was, "You following me?" Kind of reminds me of Victoria's season 1 cat, where she kept on saying, "What's that supposed to mean?" until they dropped it. So like, here in Beyblade, I don't know why that was Madoka's thing, but like, she said it a lot, and like, that was interesting because granted, I was only in like 3rd grade at the time, but like, I really did not remember her saying it that much, and for good reason, because they actually ditched it very early on. But like, yeah, it's actually not even a big deal. It's just surprising to see like what some of these characters' habits were early on in the series. Anyways, they went back to Madoka's workshop and learned more about the mechanic stuff, which expanded the world and showed that there's more to Beyblade than just battling. Like, there's other jobs, other roles, so like, that's nice to see here. On the next day, when going to the shop, Kenta got jumped by the face hunters again, and they took his Sagittario, and Gingka had to battle Kyoya to get it back, which like, I thought that that was the original plan. I thought that the reason why Gingka stayed behind was to eventually battle Kyoya. So like, I don't know if they really needed to steal Sagittario to make that happen. Anyways, I know something good may or may not happen to Kenta, but like, you know, that's far down the line. Now, currently, this guy is so useless. He's always getting jumped by the face hunters and needs someone to bail him out all of the time. This was problematic because Madoka wasn't finished with Pegasus, but like, they had to go anyways. When they got there, Gingka and Kyoya had a really interesting fight because it accomplished some things. It showcased a new type, a defense type, which came with a new strategy. And after being so dominant in episode 1, this is like the first time that like Gingka's meeting some resistance. He couldn't really attack Leon because it had good defense and they were up on a tower, so Kyoya could use the wind to his advantage and create an invisible wall around his Beyblade. It's a very neat use of strategy, and like, I find strategic battles to be more enjoyable than like brute force battles, I would say. This forced Gingka to employ a bit of strategy as well by getting blown away by Leon so he could get to the high ground and use Star Blast attack from above, where there weren't any winds surrounding Leon because the wind is always weak at the eye of the storm. So they got Sagittario back and lived happily ever after. The trio became friends for life because of this experience. And then on the face hunter side, Kyoya was mad about the loss, but a mysterious figure, Doji, just asked if he wants to win against Gingka, setting up some intrigue for the next episode. This is absolutely an A tier episode for sure, and I believe I hit on like every reason why. Good world building, showing off that there's more to this thing than just Beyblade battling, really getting you to appreciate the mechanical side of this, a very good strategic battle, and a nice setup for the next episode. Kind of like the first episode, I still wouldn't even say that this is Beyblade firing on all cylinders because it's introductory still, but in the context of setting up the world, it's a masterclass, so it just has to get an A grade. Episode 3, The Wolf's Ambition. This episode was about 2 separate stories. The story about our heroes revolved around training. Once Pegasus was fully repaired, Kenta and friends wanted training from Gingka, and them rushing him in Madoka's shop led to a funny Madoka crash out, telling them to get out of there. But yeah, Gingka kind of being weird and like not wanting to train them led Kenta to believe that he's leaving because they're scrubs, and Gingka talked about wanting to battle some high level bladers, so he spent this episode trying to show Gingka that he was a good blader. This led to a strategy focused battle between Gingka and Kenta, showing off the stamina type and how how if Kenta launched Sagittario at a certain angle, it wouldn't take as much damage. Also, because they were outside, not in a stadium, there's no stadium out, which was advantageous for stamina types. Gingka still ended up winning in the end, but like it was a good battle, and the reason why Gingka couldn't train him is because it's hard, because of like some blader spirit and like heart type of stuff. That's like what it's all about. The more interesting storyline, however, was when Doji took Kyoya and the Face Hunters to this mountain area and kind of wanted to train Kyoya to beat Gingka. But when Kyoya wouldn't go through with it, Doji basically trolled and taunted Kyoya into battling him and agreeing to his terms if he lost. And Kyoya just got absolutely owned by his Dark Wolf, despite having the advantage, just showing that there's levels to this stuff. And yeah, Kyoya got taken away, leaving the Face Hunters alone, without a leader. Crazy that Kyoya got shown to be this fearsome blader, and now he's on a losing streak, losing to Gingka and Doji in back-to-back episodes. Good bladers, but man, that is a bit underwhelming considering his setup. I'm gonna give this episode a B grade. Unfortunately, it's the first B that I'm giving out for a show that I absolutely love. The Kyoya and Doji storyline was great, like that was such an amazing battle. It's just that I didn't really care for what was going on in the Metal Bay City, which was like very calm when compared to what Kyoya had going on. And like it didn't really add that much value to this episode. Like it was just Kenta freaking out over Gingka possibly leaving again, which already happened. That definitely weighed this episode down a bit, but like it's still a B tier episode, solid watch. Episode 4, Charge, Bull Power. This episode is basically all about the fallout of what happened in the previous episode. Kyoya got taken away to this training facility so he could get even stronger to beat Gingka. There's still a question of like, if Doji's so strong and has all of these facilities on his side, then like, why is he trying to train up someone else to beat Gingka? Especially since based on his power and like all of the battles that took place so far, I would say that the power rankings for people that have like actual Beyblades goes like Kenta in 4th, Kyoya in 3rd, Doji in 2nd, then Gingka in 1st. So it seems like Doji would have the best shot to beat Gingka, but like he is a mysterious guy, so maybe there's a reason why he can't battle Gingka head on. So like just have to watch the rest of the series, I guess. Anyways, because Kyoya got taken away, this made Benkei upset because Kyoya was like his best lad, and there was like this whole flashback showing their friendship and how originally it seemed like Benkei was the leader of the Face Hunters, but as he kept on getting beat so badly by Kyoya, he became a stan basically after that. So in this episode, Doji gave him an actual Beyblade, a Dark Bull. Bull. It said if he could beat Gingka, he could get Kyoya back sooner. Like I said, the obsession with having someone else take out Gingka for him, like bro's hiding something, definitely. Anyways, as Benkei tried to tame this raging bull, this new power, Gingka and friends were messing around. He was at this burger shop, and while he was messing around with that, Kenta and Madoka basically explained the Beyblade types and stuff like that. It's still the beginning of the series and they haven't really touched on that much, so it's understandable why they're going over that stuff here, but like yeah, that's all this segment was really for, just explaining the strengths of attack, defense, stamina, and balance types. Later on, Benkei challenged Gingka to a battle in which something that I noticed was that Gingka seemed way too overly positive about this battle, seeing as the Face Hunters had been a thorn in his side for 2 episodes, but like, I guess he just really likes battling. This kind-hearted nature got to Benkei and caused him to save Gingka from certain death, which Benkei didn't want to admit because Gingka's the enemy. He's the reason why Kyoya isn't there, but at this point in the story, he's showing signs that like he wants to change his life basically. Anyways, Gingka won this battle because he's the main character, and the gang celebrated with some burgers. I'm gonna give this episode a B grade. It was really nice to get that Benkei and Kyoya backstory, considering that they're coming out of nowhere really. Actually, like everyone's coming out of nowhere. Everyone could use a backstory here and there, but like it was nice to see that Benkei was like seemingly actually in charge before he met someone stronger, and that's how the relationship started, and that's how he became a fan. But I'm gonna take off some points for part of this episode being an exposition dump of stuff that I already knew about. To be fair, at the time, this stuff wasn't common knowledge, so like I understand why they had to explain how Beyblade types work, but like now in 2025, 2026, like depending on when I decide to release this video, but like yeah, a decade and some change after the fact, this really doesn't help that much. And like I'm rating these episodes based on my experience now, so like that really added nothing for me, not gonna lie. But I will say Gingka versus Benkei was a really good battle, and although I said that Gingka won because he's the main character, it's nice that he's starting to meet a bit of resistance now. Winning isn't coming to him as easily now as it was in the first episode, and like these are actually some competitive battles where the opponent gets a chance to shine, so like I like it, definitely B tier. Also, I said that I would talk about some real life Beyblade stories. This one isn't really a story, it's more of a thing that just kind of like happened. But when I was in 3rd grade, like 2009, 2010 type of time, I would say that unlike the school that I attended the year following, everyone had Beyblades, and like Fridays were so fun because they would let us play outside, and one of the things that people would play with were Beyblades. Now I'm mentioning this in the Dark Bull episode because there was this guy that had a Dark Bull, like I think he was a grade under me, I would say. So one day we were outside and we learned that he dropped his Dark Bull down a sewer grate. I say this is something that kind of like just happened because he wasn't necessarily one of my friends, so like I didn't really have this big emotional attachment to the guy or anything, or like I didn't learn anything from it, but like yeah, it was something that I remembered, and that probably had to hurt for him because he was really excited about that bull. Like it was his favorite Beyblade, I believe, just by like looking at his usage of that Dark Bull and like the way that he talked about it. But yeah, like anyways, yeah, that's all I got. It's a B tier episode. Moving on. Episode 5, Vengeful Gasher. Alright, so this episode is all about a small town scandal. So there's this guy, and his name is Tetsuya Watarigani, and he uses a Mad Gasher Beyblade, which, side note, when I was younger, I always wanted a Mad Gasher but could never find one. Now, I know that it and some other Beyblades in this season are light wheel plastic Beyblades, and they're like more so for collection. That's why, but like, man, all of them looked so cool, and it would have been nice to have like real deal functional Beyblades with those designs. Anyways, basically Tetsuya's thing is that he acts like a crab and plays unfair. I would say that he's worse than the face hunters. I think that they're somewhat on par, like they're both kidnapping people and forcing unfair battles, but the tactics that Tetsuya uses are even more cheap, and he's actually like breaking Beyblades. So this episode really revolves around him going into town, breaking people's Beyblades and such. Everyone's kind of weak, so the battles against like stock Beyblades like Osamu came easy, but when he had to battle the big boys in Kenta and Gingka, he had to resort to underhanded tactics that only like a 5-year-old would fall for, like some "what's that over there" type stuff. And then when they looked away, he threw a pebble at Kenta's Sagittario. Tetsuya had such an elaborate plan because he took Madoka as a hostage and kept using her as leverage, like to get Gingka out to that crab stadium, and like saying if he lost, then he's never gonna see Madoka again, like just making up all these rules, like the best out of 3 format and the crab stadium and the mud stadium, which made Kenta so mad. Like that was so funny to see him crashing out like that, calling out his nonsense as Tetsuya just continued to troll. Technically, Gingka takes his first loss here, which is noteworthy, but like I'm still waiting to see when he takes a real deal loss. At the very least, that was good because it added stakes to set up a winner take all round 3. Like they're going to game 7 of the NBA finals here. In this match, I thought that the display of ideologies was interesting. Gingka is all about the power of friendship, while Tetsuya is all about self-reliance. You see, in the past, after he took up for his best friend Ekison and faced Taraba for him, losing badly, Ekison ditched him, which started his descent into madness. The music here really makes the moment. I believe that it's called Crushing the Feet. Like, yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure. I feel like the show gives Gingka this main character energy a lot, but I feel like in this situation, both of them are somewhat right. Of course, don't destroy people's Beyblades and such, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to be closed off like that and have like very little trust for friends, especially with what Tetsuya went through, where he risked everything for Ekison just for him to betray him. As a quiet sort of like self-reliant guy myself, I like that they sort of found a way to get that off. Anyways, last episode, I said something about Benkei having a turning point. Well, he saved Madoka here, which allowed Gingka to beat Tetsuya without the risk of never seeing her again. I like the turning point. Like, I like the continuation of Benkei's story. At the beginning, he was such a menacing guy, but like through his battle with Gingka, he's finally turning a new leaf and like seeing the good in people, and like now he wants to play fair. I like it because it's some quick development, and now the big bad at the beginning of the story is now helping to save Gingka, and they're rounding up a nice cast of characters here. I'm definitely going to give this episode an A grade. Episodes with a B plot aren't automatically bad or lesser, it's just that I didn't like what the previous two episodes had to offer that much. I'm not gonna lie. However, this episode had a very focused story and an interesting story at that. Like I said, small town scandal. I definitely felt the emotional weight of this situation when all of the kids were crying and Osamu was crying when he got his Beyblade damaged. Like, that really made this feel serious. He might be a bad blader, but like I really felt bad for him when he was crying, because in this world it's like your Beyblade is like comparable to like a pet or a family member or something. So like seeing that sadness from this innocent child really made me want to see Tetsuya lose, so they accomplished their goal there. It was also a good Kenta episode, wanting to stand up for his friends despite Gingka saying don't challenge Tetsuya alone. That's some good heroism, good bravery, and it shows Gingka's influence rubbing off on him despite the loss. And Kenta was funny when he was getting mad at all of Tetsuya's cheap tactics. Also, like I said, I like the clash of worldviews and ideologies and how development for Benkei is finally coming together nicely. So yeah, it's gonna get an A grade for sure. Episode 6, Aquario's Challenge. In this episode, after Gingka got sick, that basically put him out of commission. He had to go to a hospital and couldn't battle, so that basically took him out of most of this episode, meaning that this episode focuses on the other characters. So let's see how that goes, because in a lot of shows that I watch, like the show just kind of falls apart without the main character. So let's see how strong some of these supporting characters are. Most of this episode revolved around a new blader in town, Hikaru Hasuma. Interesting how the face hunter stopped her when she was trying to get into the metal bay city, but I'm assuming the same thing didn't happen to Gingka. Like, I would say maybe they were busy or on a lunch break or something, but like there's 100 of them, so like no idea how they didn't catch Gingka from the start. But like, I'll just go along with it. It's not that deep, just an observation. So after easily beating the face hunter's generics with her storm or wind Aquario, like it's kind of like a Mad Gasher situation in that way, like different fusion will. But yeah, like after that, she talked about how she wanted to battle stronger opponents. So of course Benkei knew of just the guy, Gingka. He's probably still thinking of the deal that he made with Doji. If he beats Gingka, he can see Kyoya sooner, but like it's unclear if that was just a Benkei exclusive or if it extends to others, and like if he was aligned to Hikaru when she beats Gingka, he could take a bit of credit maybe. Or maybe that plotline just got ditched for now and Benkei just wants to see Gingka lose. I don't know. Either way, Benkei led her in that direction, and later on there's like this flashback showing Hikaru's past where she lost, and then like she was crying to her mother at this hospital bed, and her mother told her about battling stronger opponents because that's the only way she can get stronger, and Hikaru is supposed to achieve the dream that she wasn't able to, and she's the only hope that she leaves behind. So I guess Hikaru's mother just had her life ended there, something like that. No real confirmation, but I guess like she was at a hospital and she was kind of talking like Batman in Batman Arkham Knight, like it's the last time they're going to see each other, and like she had to carry on for herself and stuff like that. Also, for what it's worth, the Beyblade wiki said that her mother was ill, so like she probably got her life ended there, which is never a positive thing at all, but it adds like more emotional weight to Hikaru's story. Anyways, Benkei challenged Gingka to a battle through Kenta, but since Gingka was sick, Kenta impersonated him. He had a nice bit of strategy, being able to see that Storm Aquario wasn't actually disappearing, it was just sonic speed boosting with that performance tip change. Also, side note, I had most of the Metal Fusion Beyblades, but one that I could just never get was Storm Aquario. I think Wind Aquario was like the plastic one, which was never really available to me, but I definitely saw a Storm Aquario in my area, like someone else had it. But whenever I went to like a Target or a Walmart to get one, they never had it. They had a bunch of Pegasuses and El Dragos, but never a Storm Aquario, which I really wanted because of what I was just talking about, the mode switch, the performance tip switch. That made it more than just a regular Beyblade. Anyways, Kenta had a good bit of strategy showing that he's learning, becoming stronger as a blader and such, but that just got Hikaru to go full strength and keep on beating Kenta over and over again until he lost all of his Bey points that he was gathering up. But through all of these losses, Benkei saw himself in Kenta, like when he was getting beat by Kyoya all those times. So this episode kind of ends on that note, I would say. I'm going to give this episode an A grade. Like I said, I was kind of skeptical of how this episode would perform without Gingka, but it held up well. It really helped that we got to meet a new blader in Hikaru, and she had a good storyline to explore. Also, Kenta has been kind of useless, so although he lost a bunch of times here, it was nice to see him take center stage and like actually develop and learn how to battle on his own more. So hopefully in the future, he doesn't need all of that saving. Also, if Hikaru's backstory really is what I think it is, then I just like how everyone's in this Beyblade business for a different reason. So yeah, definitely an A tier episode. Episode 7, it's our special move, Sagittario. This is a direct continuation of episode 6. It's a mini arc of sorts. So after Kenta lost all of his points, he got invited to train with Benkei, so he had to go there while avoiding Gingka and Madoka, keeping this a secret. But he dropped his Bey pointer and they saw that he had no points left, so they knew that something was up. Kind of funny how this training was mostly physical, with Benkei just throwing Kenta around like, is this spinning tops or what? The training went well, however, Gingka and Madoka were watching, and more problematic for Kenta and Benkei, Tetsuya was watching, so he was able to mess things up. Hikaru was actually about to leave town because she felt like there were no strong bladers there, so all of that training was about to be for nothing. But when Tetsuya told on them, she got mad at Benkei and wanted a battle with the real Gingka, which would again render all of that training pointless now that Kenta's cover is blown. So the next day was the day of the battle. Madoka gave Kenta a new metal face bolt to increase Sagittario's performance since she knew what was up, and basically this section of the episode was about the battles. They found out that Tetsuya told, so Benkei spent his time battling him, holding him off so Kenta could battle Hikaru. Then when Kenta got to Hikaru, he was able to defeat her with a new special move, Flame Claw. Let's go, my boy. He was able to develop this special move with his new face bolt and through his training with Benkei. So after all of that, they all lived happily ever after. Well, everyone except for Benkei. He got kicked out of the Face Hunters for hanging out with Kenta. Alright, so I'm gonna give this episode an A grade. This mini arc was well done. It's a good payoff. What I have to say is pretty much more of the same from the previous episode. It's a nice Kenta focused episode. Really nice episode without using Gingka that much. Like, explore some of the other characters more. But yeah, it's nice that he finally solved his own problem for once and came up with a special move. I would say that the battles weren't all that, especially Benkei versus Tetsuya, but this was more so about Kenta solving a problem on his own and developing a special move and like getting on the pathway to finally becoming a serious blader. Also, although he tried to go back to the Face Hunters, it's good development for Benkei, and it's like without Kyoya around, he's opening his eyes a bit more, becoming a better person, I would say. So yeah, it's definitely an A tier episode, A tier arc. Episode 8, Mercy's Dangerous Trap. This is where Wildfang edits ends the Metal Bay City arc in episode 7 and starts the Kyoya Returns arc in this episode, which is actually very understandable. But for me, I'm going to keep the Metal Bay City arc going, or I'm just going to say that this is the Kyoya Returns mini arc within the Metal Bay City arc. Alright, so this episode's title is self-explanatory. This is more so a Kyoya focused episode after being out of the picture for a few episodes. Kyoya returns, if you will. This episode revolved all around his training. He's ahead of schedule, but he still can't beat Gingka because of the power of friendship and stuff like that. So he had to obtain Fangs of the Heart while climbing up Wolf Canyon. Also, Merci was sent to collect data on Gingka and Pegasus. When Gingka had to go to the bathroom, they kidnapped him basically and told him that he was on a game show, he had to compete in all of these challenges, but really they were just collecting data on him and his Pegasus. Also, continuing the storyline of Benkei getting kicked out of the Face Hunters, he's basically joined the group here. He joined the good guys. I'm gonna give this episode a C grade. It's alright, but it wasn't really all that action-packed, I'm not gonna lie. There were no real stakes on Gingka's end, it was just a boring battle simulation. However, for Kyoya, it was nice to see that moment when he conquered Wolf Canyon, showing that he's determined and ready for anything. But yeah, there's not a ton to say about this episode. It's a slower episode. It's a less eventful episode. It's not like there's an interesting battle or a new character introduction or anything, not counting Merci. So while it's definitely not a filler episode, it is important, but it's not the most exciting episode ever, which is why it has to get a C grade. Episode 9, Leon's Counterattack. This episode was mainly about the return of Kyoya, that's what got the most focus. You see, he returned and disbanded the Face Hunters because now he's so strong that he doesn't need a gang. That training with Doji and Wolf Canyon taught him a lot and made him a much better blader. This was shown in his battle with Benkei and Kenta when he unleashed his new special move, Lion Wild Wind Fang Dance, more of an offensive special move that just devastated Kenta and Benkei. Good that he's finally winning battles after having that tough guy act at the beginning, not really living up to it until this point. He beat Krabby Tetsuya at the beginning when he was trying to take over the Face Hunters, and he beat Kenta and Benkei. And not only is it clear that Leon is stronger, but Kyoya just turned into a complete savage while he was gone. He was trying to destroy Beyblades and show absolutely no mercy. He doesn't even consider Benkei a friend anymore. I really did not remember that Kyoya went through something like this. I always remembered him to be kind of reserved, so this was definitely a shock to see. Then on the Gingka side of things, he finally got to battle with Hikaru, despite Hikaru thinking that she wasn't worthy and needed to beat Kenta first before battling Gingka. I'm gonna give this episode a C. It's a fine episode, but the problem is that they focused on the Kyoya plot a lot, understandably so, because he has the episode title. Leon has the episode title, it's his big return. But honestly, I didn't really enjoy seeing Benkei and Kenta basically just get dominated. They padded it out, but this was really an annihilation that probably didn't need to go on that long. Meanwhile, a battle that sounded more interesting on paper, Gingka versus Hikaru, got the short end when I think that it had the potential to be a much better battle than what was shown. And I kind of wish that the screen time was swapped between those two battles, or maybe just an even split. Also, she wasn't on my radar going into this rewatch because I know that she doesn't play the biggest role in terms of battling in later seasons, but right now I am starting to like Hikaru. I like her closed off nature and struggle with finding worth, I would say. That's so relatable, and I like that. Although they didn't get the A plot in this episode, she's still having a decently sized role in these past few episodes. Dubs for Hikaru, what a surprise. Never thought I would become a Hikaru fan. But yeah, C tier episode. This stuff could have been over with quickly, but it was kind of drawn out and kind of boring, which took away from a potentially interesting battle. So C is a good grade. Episode 10, Heated Battle, Gingka versus Kyoya. After Kenta brought Benkei back in bad condition and told Gingka about Kyoya going off the rails, this episode was about one thing and one thing only. It was about Gingka versus Kyoya, and Gingka trying to stop the rampage, stop this wild Kyoya, and show him that the power of friendship matters, So that's what this whole episode was really about, a battle. It was an intense battle, sort of like a mini boss in the grand scheme of things, or like the final boss fight for the Metal Bay City arc. Kyoya really pushed Gingka to the brink. He had counters for everything, like when Gingka thought that he could just beat the Lion Gale Force wall the same way, but like, nah. Special move: Lion Wild Wind Fang Dance. Not enough for you? Well, guess what? New special move: King Lion Tearing Blast. Pegasus was even losing feathers and like almost stopped spinning. Like he was on the ropes, closest that he's ever gotten to like a legitimate defeat, because Kyoya put in that work and had counters for like everything. But main character is gonna main character. His friend showed up and like he talked to Kyoya about the power of friendship and how Kyoya was never alone because he had Leon and he was hurting him. So Gingka unleashed his new special move, Meteor Shower Attack, and won the battle while teaching Kyoya about the power of friendship and getting him out of that deranged state. This episode ended with Doji congratulating Gingka, to which Gingka knew of him, meaning that there was possibly a reason why Doji didn't want to take Gingka on himself, because he knew him and something probably happened in their past, maybe. Like, we don't know at this point in the season. But before any of that could get expanded on, the episode just ends, and that's the cliffhanger. This episode is definitely gonna get an A. I love that the story is pretty focused, like no side plots, and the whole episode is basically a battle, an entertaining one at that. Not necessarily like for Gingka, he was getting owned for most of this battle, but it was nice to see like just how strong Kyoya had gotten. And like I said, it felt like a final boss fight for this arc. Another thing that made it feel like a climactic conclusion to this arc is that everyone was there. Madoka and Kenta, of course, Kenta's friends in Osamu, Takashi and Akira, Benkei, Hikaru, Tetsuya, like some face hunters and more, like friend, foe, whatever. Everyone that we met throughout this arc was at this battle, rooting for Gingka to stop the rampage and save Kyoya. It was just so cool to see all of this stuff like finally materializing, and everyone that Gingka met along the way and like crossed paths with actually getting to play somewhat of a role in this battle, even though they didn't physically battle, like they were still there to support. I feel like I'm harping on it forever, but like I absolutely loved how they incorporated everyone into this episode, giving it this like gangs all here energy and like final boss energy for this arc. So it's definitely gonna get an A grade, and like it's a good ending to the Metal Bay City arc. Episode 11, Chase the Wolf. This is the start of the Forbidden Bay arc, so most of this episode is set up an explanation. You see, the reason why Gingka recognized Doji was because, well, obviously he knew him in the past. Shocker. He got a flashback to a guy, which technically his name gets revealed later, but come on, it's Ryuga. And like there were all of these rocks falling, and he's holding up the Forbidden Beyblade, Lightning El Drago. So basically, Gingka crashed out and disappeared until he told his friends the truth about the situation, and like how Doji has a Forbidden Beyblade and wants to use it for evil. All while this was happening, Kyoya was listening in on their conversation and just disappeared after Madoka, Benkei, and Kenta got him right, got him to a hospital, like got him some snacks and fixed up Leon. This really could have been a turning point for Kyoya after snapping out of that deranged state and finding friendship and such. Like the good guys finally being nice to him, but he ditched them. So they spent some time looking for Kyoya, looking for clues as to where the Dark Nebula was, until this mysterious guy Kyoya just showed up in the night and gave them some vague directions, which they were eventually able to use to pinpoint the location of the fortress. Gingka, Kenta, and Benkei were getting overpowered by the defenses until Kyoya came in out of nowhere, and like they all used their special moves to bust down the door. And it was a race against time, because earlier they were working on Ryuga and like talking about data and stuff and like trying to unleash the power of the Forbidden Beyblade, El Drago. So that's what they were up against, and the episode ended after they ran in the fortress. I'm gonna give this episode a B. The ending really saved it from being something like a C tier episode. I love the ending, Kyoya finally joining the gang. He says it's just because there's like unfinished business with him and Doji trying to be like Shadow the Hedgehog, but nah, he's part of the gang, at least for now, like at least for this arc. They're all friends, so like that's nice to see that the Gingka crew and the former face hunters are all on the same side for now. Also, it was cool to see everyone combine their special moves to break down the door. That's like some Grand Theft Auto 5 like option C type stuff. But outside of that, this episode was kind of somber and boring. Most of it was set up and exposition dumping, and like there wasn't really much action until they went to the fortress. I guess no action unless I'm counting Doji versus Kyoya, but like that was over with quickly. Like that wasn't even a real fight. Also, me and Kyoya just can't catch a break. He has so many losses for being such a tough guy, but like that loss was somewhat understandable because like he was just coming off of an intense battle with Gingka. But yeah, it's a B tier episode. The ending saved it from being like kind of boring, kind of mid, not gonna lie. Episode 12, Infiltrate the Dark Nebula's castle. This episode is continuing on, trying to stop the Forbidden Bay from being used by the Dark Nebula. It's an infiltration mission, Splinter Cell type stuff, Metal Gear Solid type stuff. So, in the last episode, they opened the door, and in this episode, it's a race to get to the top level of the castle before Ryuga awakens, which was a failure. I'm gonna give this episode an A. I thought that I wasn't gonna like this episode because it's another episode that has Merci in it, and the last time it had a big role, it was just Gingka competing in these uninteresting challenges to obtain some data. And while this episode was somewhat similar because it was a challenge gauntlet, at least the stakes were higher because like they were infiltrating a base. Also, they incorporated some real battles in there, like Kyoya versus Dan Soto and Reiki Soto, and Gingka versus Doji. Also, like I said in the previous episode, the team up aspect was nice, everyone having each other's backs, helping them defeat the obstacles, and like Kenta and Benkei staying behind to fight, and then Kyoya staying behind to fight really enforces that camaraderie. And like yeah, everyone had some importance in this episode, with Madoka hacking into the security like it was like a virtual Beyblade battle or something. Also, I like the strategy of Kyoya and Leon creating his own air current to use his special move to beat Dan and Reiki, just showing how far he's come as a blader and how the Dark Nebula training actually helped him become better. Also, maybe this could be another video, but Gingka was sort of offered to like join the Dark Nebula or like team up with them, so I kind of wonder what that could have looked like, because Gingka and Ryuga on the same team, that's Shaq and Kobe level dominance. If he joined the Dark Nebula, they'd be like the 2017 Warriors, but like nah, because if that happened, there'd be no story to tell. Like there'd be no Beyblade Metal Fusion because like they'd need some opposition. So as corny as his power of friendship type stuff is, it is necessary to have a series. But yeah, like I said, wasn't expecting to like this one, but it gets an A grade. Episode 13, El Drago Awakens. In this episode, it's basically just one long fight, Gingka versus Ryuga. But it's not like it was a competitive battle or anything, despite the battle being so long and drawn out, which is like nice when the focus is kept on the Beyblades, but like this was a very unentertaining one-sided affair. Basically, Gingka's Pegasus couldn't make a dent in El Drago because this is the first time that like everyone's encountering a left rotating Beyblade that steals the power of right rotating Beyblades. Doji said there's only one left rotating Beyblade in the world. That'll be interesting to note. Obviously, at the time, they probably didn't know that they were going to make more left rotating Beyblades. But like, yeah, if he thinks that, he's in for something, that's what I'll say. But yeah, he's just so overpowered. This is like the first time that Pegasus' special move failed. Ryuga started talking down on Gingka's father, and like by the way that he was talking about Gingka's father, that kind of implies that he's not alive anymore. Like that made Gingka mad, and like by crashing out like that, it made everyone, especially Kenta, feel uneasy because he's going up against everything that he taught them, especially when Gingka beat Kyoya when Kyoya was in a similar state. Also, by continuing to attack El Drago, he's giving it more power, speeding up the awakening process. Gingka's finished off with a dark move, Dragon Emperor Soaring Bite Strike, handing Gingka his first legitimate loss very decisively, showing that he's not on top of the world. And as Ryuga and Doji were leaving, they talked about moving forward with the preparations for Battle Bladers, which it's not explained in this episode, but we're gonna find out in a few. And the episode ends with Gingka crying, apologizing to his father for helping Ryuga. I'm gonna give this episode a C. I guess this episode is nice for explaining the power of Beyblades. Like I know that Doji had this big explanation of how like powerful they were, talking about how they can change the course of rivers and like beat armies and such. Like that's good lore, W lore, but most of this episode was spent on an uninteresting one-sided battle. Now, I understand why it had to be one-sided: to establish the big bad, to knock Gingka down a peg, show that he's nowhere near the best and that he has a long way to go, which is going to set up like the next 30 or so episodes. That's actually very understandable, but it doesn't make it entertaining, especially to end the arc. The ending of the Metal Bay City arc was happy, with all of Gingka's friends and foes coming together, supporting Gingka, like Gingka winning the battle. That was fun. While the ending of the Forbidden Bay arc sees Gingka get destroyed, which doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just not as entertaining as what came before. So yeah, that's why it's going to get a C grade. Also, I have a recommendation. So I didn't watch this series subbed. I watched it dubbed because I barely know any Japanese, and like it would be a lot to juggle reading the subtitles and like keeping up with the action and taking down notes simultaneously. But after watching the whole series, I went back to some episodes because like in anime, I always hear how subbed is better than dubbed, and like I just wanted to see like how or like why, like what makes it special. Way later on in the series, I'm going to talk about a moment that was kind of ruined by the dubbed version, but in this episode, I just thought that something that was interesting is that in the English dub, Ryuga sounds so crazy, but in the original Japanese version, he sounds kind of chill, like kind of reserved. I haven't decided which one I like more because like that was only one episode, but man, that was interesting to learn that like there was a different vision or style for Ryuga in the Japanese version, and like I would definitely recommend checking that out. Also, one last thing relating to dubbing. I am just now finding out that the English dub was done by Canadians, Nelvana, and somehow I never put it together that these voices sounded so familiar until now. You might recognize Madoka, Hikaru, and Tetsuya's voices from Total Drama Island, the Total Drama series, where Barbara Mamabolo, Madoka's voice actor, voiced Zoe and Millie, Katie Griffin, Hikaru's voice actor, voiced Scary Girl, and Scott McCord, Tetsuya's voice actor, voiced Owen. So that was nice to find out, as I've made a bunch of Total Drama videos on this channel. Anyways, yeah, C tier episode, moving on. Episode 14, Memories of Ryu. This was mainly a flashback episode. Gingka was hurt from losing to Ryuga, so much so that he lost to Osamu, which is embarrassing, but like that was because he had a bad launch. But still, the loss was affecting him, so Kenta tracked him down and Gingka opened up about his past. All of the mystery, like the doji and Ryuga stuff and everything about his father, all of that is revealed in this flashback. It just gives some very much needed information to fill in the story. So basically, Gingka was from Koma Village, and Pegasus wasn't always his, it was his father, Ryu Hagane's Beyblade. He reinforces the themes of what Gingka had always been talking about in this series. It's not about the Beyblade's power, it's about the Blader's spirit, as he gave Storm Pegasus to Gingka for a battle and was able to beat him with a stock Beyblade because he had more Blader spirit than Gingka. He seemed to be a jolly guy, well-respected guy around the village. However, one night, when they were at a mountain, they saw Doji and Ryuga going there to retrieve the forbidden Beyblade. Now, they had traps and such, and it was like all the way up in the mountains, but it seemed like it was a bit too easy to get El Drago. Seems like anyone could have gotten in, which raises the question, why did no one from the village seemingly attempt to get it? Like, why isn't it buried underground or something where like no one knows where it is except for one person? But I guess I could just be underrating Doji and Ryuga because they had a helicopter, which I guess no one in the village could afford. Also, Doji took care of the traps while Ryuga got the Beyblade, so like I guess that could be something to consider. Anyways, Ryu went up there. He was like the last line of defense, but he lost to Ryuga, and after that, the mountain started to collapse from inside, and it's like he was stranded because there was a lot of lava and the bridge collapsed and stuff. So he launched his Pegasus over to Gingka, said that the thing that decides a battle in the end is the Blader spirit, and well, his life got ended inside the mountain as Gingka escaped. Very tragic backstory, but he got that off his chest. He told Kenta. They promised to battle the next day, and the episode ended with Gingka still sad and saying, "Sorry, Kenta," as he left ominously. I'm gonna give this episode a B grade, which is like the highest grade that I've given any flashback episode and stuff that I've talked about and reviewed. I usually don't like them because I'm more interested in the present situation, like don't take me back to the past, but here it's very much needed to tell the story that they've been trying to tell for like the past 4 or so episodes. I've got to say, they told the story well and left no questions unanswered. I lean towards liking the more action oriented episodes. This one didn't really have enough action for me, But it is a very necessary episode in all of this, and one of the first times I actually liked a flashback episode. And it explains why Gingka even wants to battle strong bladers in the first place, why he's on this mission to avenge his father and defeat El Drago. So I've got to give it a B grade. It's a strong episode and it makes sense of everything. Episode 15, The Mysterious Kyoya. This episode is very much about what the title says it's about. You see, it's basically a Gingka-less episode. Remember how ominous the ending of the previous episode was? Well, that's because Gingka was always planning to leave and go to Koma Village, so he basically just had a few lines as he traveled to Koma Village in this episode. Then, when Kyoya, Benkei, Kenta, and Madoka found out, they followed him to Koma Village, or at least they tried their best to. No one really knew where it was. Must be a really secret place. Also, Kyoya, he cares about Gingka. He said that he was only tagging along to settle the score with Doji, which I guess is still ongoing, but he doesn't necessarily need Gingka for that, so now it looks like he kind of found his squad. Anyways, when they got to this forested area near Koma Village, that's where the title comes into play. Basically, there was this mysterious guy named Kyoya that was causing a lot of unnecessary havoc. He was stalking them from the bushes, trying to get in between them by getting a monkey to eat their sandwiches, lying to them when he eventually met both of the groups, giving them some weird looks, talking about how he's never seen anyone on the mountains, acting like he didn't know Gingka, and like there was this one time where he hid and used the Beyblade to save Benkei from a boar. Like all of this stuff was so weird, and it's not really explained what his intentions are. Like, is he trying to help them because he saved Madoka and Kenta and caught some fish for them and led them on a decent path? But also, is he trying to sabotage? Like when he was weirded out when Benkei wanted to clear a pathway to advance closer to where they wanted to go, and like, why was he lying about being interested in Beyblades? The only one that was able to see through all of this stuff was Kyoya. The others are like the type to believe that gullible isn't a word in the dictionary. They were just eating up all of that stuff, everything he said. Meanwhile, Kyoya always got a weird feeling whenever Kyoya was like hiding in the bushes, and whenever Kyoya gave like a weird or suspicious look, Kyoya countered with his own. And apparently he saw Kyoya launch Aries from the bushes and like kind of questioned in his head why he was lying. And eventually when they reconvened and Madoka and Kenta told their story, Kyoya remembered that Kyoya said that he hadn't seen anyone, which is good for Kyoya. Like, I like that for his character. Always sharp and observant. I like the little silent standoff that he and Kyoya are having. And this is actually interesting. So I like that all of this stuff leaves enough mystery for the next episode, and that's where it ends. This episode is easily an A tier episode. Again, it's another episode that sees Gingka's sideline, which forces some of the other characters to step up, and they all delivered. This is absolutely one of the funniest episodes so far. It was funny when Kenta tripped and Benkei said more baggage to carry, and Kenta and Madoka, as bags, complained about how they're not baggage, and then Benkei kicked the stick into some bees and got chased by them. Then there was this picnic feud where Madoka and Kenta got mad that Benkei was eating all of the meat sandwiches, and the argument distracted them so much so that they couldn't see a monkey taking their sandwiches. After seeing Benkei and Kenta really bond, it's unfortunate that their friendship ended over sandwiches, but it was funny. Also, why is Kyoya getting dragged into this like breakup? I guess he just sided with Benkei because that's his bro. Then it was funny when they were mocking each other, complaining about each other. Kenta saying bull uppercut, and when Benkei described Kenta and Madoka to Kyoya, he called them crybaby and bossy boots respectively. Man, this episode delivers on the comedy and shows that a good episode doesn't necessarily need to have like an intense battle. Also, like I said, the Kyoya mystery aspect added a lot of intrigue to this episode. Easy A tier episode for sure. Episode 16, The Magnificent Aries. This episode is basically another Gingka-less episode. He's only really seen traveling, and at the end, he met up with this dog. Basically, what happened is, remember when Kyoya was the only one clocking Kyoya? Well, that basically came to a head in this episode. Kyoya just kept on leading them in circles, which funny enough, like I said, they're all gullible. No one knew that they were going in circles except for Kyoya, and he was stacking rocks as some evidence. Even after everyone saw the evidence, Kyoya was still trying to play it off, and Madoka and Kenta didn't like Kyoya pointing a Beyblade at him because they didn't know that he was a blader. But Kyoya tested that and made a rock fall on his head to the point where he would have to use his rock or clay Aries to save himself, which happened. But man, that's dark. Kyoya almost committed a crime, almost put Brody on a t-shirt. But yeah, after Kyoya was revealed to be a blader, he said that he would show them the real path to Koma Village if they could beat him. So that's basically what the rest of this episode is. Kyoya versus Kenta and Benkei, which he won those battles, but right when it was Kyoya's turn, no, he ran from the smoke. Apparently, all of that talking about Gingka and like crying after they lost to Kyoya, that showed him that they actually care about Gingka and have the blader spirit. Basically, Kyoya was testing them because Koma Village is a sacred and hidden place that no one can travel to unless they're worthy. He's also Gingka's childhood friend, so it makes some sense as to why he was that protective. So they got to take a shortcut to the village, and that's where the episode ended, without Kyoya getting to battle. I'm going to give this episode an A, mainly because of the strength of the battles. Kyoya won both of them, but the one with Benkei was kind of competitive. You see, it was tough to land a hit on Aries because it was a never seen before Beyblade, and for most of the battling time, they didn't know that a lot of their attacks were being blocked by the spin track. Basically, Aries spin track is free spinning, so when they attack the spin track, it wouldn't disrupt Aries rotation. Man, as a kid, I thought that was so cool. I had a Rock Aries Beyblade, and although it wasn't this frequent thing, there were times where like it would be at a certain angle and a Beyblade would hit its spin track, and like, you know, you would sort of see the spin track stop a bit. Like, it didn't necessarily have the power to move Beyblades to the other side like in the anime, but that was cool to see when it happened. Also, I was able to like pick it up sometimes by the spin track, so that made Rock Aries such a cool Beyblade. That spin track and the horn throw destruction special move caused a lot of trouble for everyone. First off, I like that the battle with Benkei and Kyoya was Bull versus Aries because both of them have horns. Also, it was an intense strategic battle where they kept on trying to go lower than each other so they could get the advantage and like fling the other one up into the air. Also, it was cool when Benkei came up with a new special move, Red Horned Uppercut, to try and beat Kyoya. Like, this took everything out of him, pushed him to his limits. But unfortunately, he doesn't get to win with his new special move, which ruins it a bit. But I understand why they had to let Kyoya win these battles here. If he's not on top for like a certain amount of time, if he's not winning, then there's no reason to care about him. Kind of like when Hikaru was so fearsome for like the first episode where she got her introduction, but by now she's probably not even a top 10 blader. Like, she's on the edge of that list. And that's just going to keep on happening. Like, right now, Kyoya seems OP, which makes the story interesting right now. Probably like a top 5 blader as of right now, but by the end, is he really going to be anywhere near that? I don't know, you gotta see. So yeah, a Benkei win would have been cool, but like, I understand why they had to establish Kyoya's dominance. However, the reason why he ran from smoke with Kyoya is because I bet that Kyoya is better than Kyoya at this point in the story. So like, they can't have him losing so early on. There's got to be an obstacle that they defeat later on. So while it probably would have been somewhat of an entertaining battle, it's understandable why they didn't get to battle here. But yeah, like I said, easy A tier episode. The battles and the strategies were nice, and this was yet another good episode without Gingka, just showing off and strengthening a great supporting cast, well-written characters. Episode 17, The Silver Pegasus. In this episode, the gang got to Koma Village, but this dog, Haikuto, said that Gingka already left and was climbing up a mountain to get to this scroll to get more power for Pegasus, despite it already being maxed out on power, which he doesn't know, but Madoka was able to explain that. So this episode was basically about watching Gingka go through these obstacles to get to the top. Then on the other side, since the mountain was sacred, his friends kept on trying to convince Haikuto to go and help him because like, they're his friends. Even when they couldn't break down the door to get to the mountain and Haikuto told them that they can't help Gingka because they're not strong enough as bladers, they started going on about like friendship and such, which one got Gingka to get up after like he had been knocked down because, you know, they got that connection. But also Dark Nebula infiltration style, Benkei, Kyoya, and Kenta all combined their powers to break down the door. They all got a crack at it by themselves, but no luck. So like this was the only way that they could get past the door. Apparently, Gingka got past the door all by himself, so that says a lot about how strong he is relative to Kyoya. Anyways, when Gingka finally got to the top and got to the scroll, basically it was just a waste of time. I guess his father like left a note, but like he was also talking to him like he's a ghost, I guess. But basically the gist of the conversation was like he doesn't need a scroll to get more power or anything. Like it's all about Blader's spirit type stuff. I guess he gained experience from taking the journey, but like he really went up there for no reason. Like that was so funny how he wasted all of that time. This episode is gonna get an F. I've been very lenient with the grades. Like there's some episodes that I actually considered giving D grades to, but like they had enough redeeming qualities to get a C, but this episode is buns. It's so boring. Like there's barely any action. It's just talking about the power of friendship and like Blader's spirit all the time. I wouldn't say that it's a filler episode. Like it's definitely very much necessary as they met Haikuto and like finally got to Koma Village. And I believe that Gingka was supposed to gain experience, like learn a lesson from that journey. But man, I'm just talking about this episode from the perspective of like a third grade me in like 2009 or like 2010. It's better with streaming now. Like the problem is better with streaming now, but man, Beyblade was my world back then. And if I waited a whole entire week just to see this uninteresting episode and like had to wait another week just to get something else, something new, I would be really upset. It's not even like a bad illogical episode, it's just boring when I've seen that this show is capable of so much more, so it's going to get an F. Episode 18, The Green Hades. In this episode, after they reconvened with Gingka, there was some weirdness. They were exploring the village, Beyblading in different spots, and whenever Kyoya was good at something and cementing himself as Ginka's #1 rival, Hyoma felt some type of way about that. Like, I guess he felt like Kyoya was showing him up in a way, like, and I guess he got jealous or something because in his mind, he was talking about how no matter how hard Kyoya tries, there are some things that he'll never accomplish. And then he took them to this green Hades stadium, created from a meteorite made out of Moldavite, where Hyoma never lost. To drive the point home further that he's jealous, before the battle against Gingka, he went on this sort of like rant, talking about how he's Ginka's true #1 rival, and his friends just met him, and like they don't know Gingka like how Hyoma knows him, and like he's the only one that can tell if Gingka fully recovered. What in the high school drama is this? Like, this is so weird and coming out of left field, especially for what Hyoma's character was established to be. Not that characters can't act differently. Obviously, Kyoya and Gingka were recent examples when they sort of like descended into madness, but it's like, this is weird. This is like so all of a sudden, and it kind of feels forced, not gonna lie. But yeah, they had themselves a battle in the unique stadium where, although it was Hyoma's first time battling Pegasus, this is basically like a home field advantage because there was no traction on the stadium, which negatively affected Pegasus, which was called out by Gingka's friends complaining about it being unfair. But Kyoya didn't mind it being unfair because when you win with disadvantageous conditions, the win feels better. I definitely agree with Kyoya here. Like, it's been displayed multiple times that Gingka won't back down when he's in a disadvantageous position, like the 100 Bay battle, and against Mr. Krabs, and against Kyoya when it was so windy outside, playing to his advantages, Kyoya's advantage. Anyways, the center of the stadium was the only place where they could generate friction, so it was a race to the center where Hyoma actually used Aries spin track to change directions and speed up and like beat Pegasus there, which I actually thought was some really nice strategic play. I absolutely love how strategic these battles are. Speaking of strategy, when Pegasus got launched into the air and Ares dodged his Star Blast attack, I didn't know if it was like planned, seemed quite convenient, but that created cracks in the stadium, causing Ares to get stuck, jamming the spin track, and Pegasus was able to travel along the cracks and take out Ares. Then at the end of this episode, again with the high school drama, Kyoya was kind of upset that Gingka surpassed him and had no use for him now, until he learned that Gingka could have multiple rivals. Did you really need to have a whole Beyblade battle to learn that? That's kind of why I said this conflict felt kind of forced. I don't have a better answer, but like, yeah, that's just kind of weird. I'm gonna give this episode a B. It's a cool episode. It wasn't the craziest episode ever because the conflict felt weird and the battle was like, all right, wasn't the craziest battle ever, but like, yeah, I definitely like the strategy used in the battles, and overall the episode was all right. Definitely more action packed than the abomination that was the last episode, and it was good to see Kyoya finally get beat after going on an ego trip. So yeah, B tier episode. Episode 19, Conquer the Tag Team Battle. It's kind of the last episode of the Koma Village arc, even though it doesn't take place in Koma Village at all. Like, they just got back. But they mentioned Koma Village in this episode, and a new arc starts up in the next episode that's completely unrelated to what happened in this episode. So really, it's kind of a one-off sandwiched in between two arcs. But if I had to place it in an arc, it would be in the Koma Village arc, since the next arc hasn't started yet. So yeah, this episode is basically an ad, which explains the one-off nature. Really, the whole entire show is an ad trying to get you to buy the Beyblades, but this episode right here was such a blatant ad showing how you can customize the Beyblades. You see, when Madoka was cleaning up the Beyblades, something was wrong with Bull, so she switched out its lower half with Sagittarius' lower half, and at first Kenta and Benkei were confused, but when they finally learned about what happened, they liked it and just got obsessed with changing parts. There was a lot of explanation from Madoka, Benkei, and Kenta about how part changes work and what their advantages were. Like, yeah, I'm not even saying it's a bad thing that this was basically a 20-minute ad, but it was kind of funny how blatant it was and like how disconnected this episode feels. So anyways, Kenta and Benkei got into this tag team battle tournament where they were dominating until their parts fell in the water. But kind of undermining the purpose of this episode, Gingka inspired them to get back out there because it's not about the parts that you use, it's about skill and those two special words, Blader Spirit, you know? So yeah, instead of the part switching aspect, Kenta and Benkei embraced the tag team aspect to win. Like, yeah, that's basically all. I'm gonna give this episode an A. It was a fun episode. It's kind of cool to look at where Kenta and Benkei are now at this point in the series. Kenta was getting bullied by Benkei. Now they're joking around and like nerding out over Beyblade parts, which was fun to see. I wasn't really interested in the tournament itself, but Kenta and Benkei were a good comedic pairing in this episode. It wasn't the most story relevant and adventurous episode, but it was funny. Like, I had a good time watching it, and it brought back some memories from when I used to customize some of my Beyblades. So yeah, nice episode. It was a nice cool down, unserious episode after the intensity of the Forbidden Bay arc and parts of the Koma Village arc. So yeah, fun episode. It deserves an A. Episode 20. Begin the survival battle. Well, this is the start of the survival battle arc. Basically, a bunch of bladers get dropped on Beyblade Island and they're going to compete to be the last one standing. The last person gets one wish, like it's Fairly Odd Parents, you know? Which brings up some questions. Well, first, everyone was saying they want dumb stuff like food and such, but like, what's the limit? This person said he wanted a girlfriend, so can they actually give him a girlfriend? Because like, they did say they'll grant your wish, but like, that's forcing love. And like, what if they break up? Is there like a 60-day return policy or something? Also, about the wishes, like, is there a way to game the system? I remember watching this Fairly Odd Parents episode way back, and I remember Mr. Crocker got this genie that worked differently from the fairies. Like, they could only grant 3 wishes. So to game the system, he used up his first 2 wishes. Then on the 3rd wish, he was always like, I want another 3 wishes. So like, what if in this survival battle, you use 1 wish to ask for like 3 more wishes? What if you ask for like a lifetime supply of Dr. Pepper or something? What if you ask for like a rocket ship or something. Like, what's the budget that they're working with here? Obviously the writers can make anything happen, and like they were never going to go to those extremes in the first place, but like, yeah, not gonna lie, that opens up a can of worms, and like it is fun to ask these questions. Anyways, yeah, back to the survival battle. They can use a lot of different strategies, like going at it alone, teaming up, and even hiding and waiting things out, which were all strategies that were on display. Also, there were treasure chests around the island that had useful battle tools in them. I know it's only the first episode of this arc, but man, this is such an amazing idea. I'm a Survivor fan, so I kind of like the survival, like stranded on an island aspect. I also like the strategies, especially the one that Kyoya used, where he was planning to wait everyone out and hide, which kind of reminds me of stuff like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear with all of that stealth. There was so much freedom, so many ways to approach this competition, which made it an interesting idea. Anyways, for the information, it is good that the heroes and Tetsuya are all back together. Nice seeing Tetsuya and Hikaru after some time. Nice seeing Kyoya wasn't left behind in Koma Village. Also, after getting pushed into a plane when like she was supposed to be a volunteer mechanic, Madoka's competing in this, so it'll be interesting to see what she can bring to the battlefield, if anything at all. Also, there's a new face. He didn't get his name revealed here, but he's Utendo. And basically, before all of this, the Dark Nebula recruited him because he was strong, and that was a good choice because he won up Gingka. After Gingka beat like 5 guys, later DJ announced that there was a guy that beat like 10 guys, so they just let that fester throughout the episode, not revealing his name, but showing that he's strong. So like, you want to stay invested, like you want to meet him eventually. I'm gonna give this episode an A for sure. I already talked about how I absolutely love the concept. I like how we're catching up with old friends so like they don't get forgotten, especially since Hikaru is one of my favorites. Also, I used to think that I didn't like Mr. Krabs, but man, Tetsuya is so funny. He's gonna trap Benkei and Ota. I'll just call Osamu, Takashi, and Akira Ota, but yeah, he's gonna trap them and try to form this like army, and when they didn't comply, he's gonna try and throw their Beyblades in the water. Then when Kenta saved the Beyblades and freed his friends, Krabby was the one crying about them ganging up on him when he attempted the exact same thing. Then, when they got to the battle, these guys really fell for the same type of shenanigans. Is that a flying pig? Which actually unlocked the memory. Like, back around this time, 2009, 2010, I used to play this game on Funbrain named When Pigs Fly. But yeah, they kind of fell for it and turned around back in time to see that Krabby was holding a big rock over their Beyblade. So like, he had to play it off like he was exercising, but he eventually got beat. Also, they said no cheating, so like, how did he not get disqualified before he got defeated? Because he trapped Benkei and Ota, and he was about to throw a rock on the Beyblades. But I've got to say, they never clearly define like what qualifies as cheating, so that's somewhat understandable, I guess. Also, another funny bit was when they saved Krabby from falling off a cliff just for him to act all dramatic like he was gonna turn a new leaf, just for him to make them fall off a cliff, which injured Kenta and split up Ota from Benkei and Kenta. But like I said, I thought that I didn't like Krabby, but he and that plotline brought some amazing entertainment to an episode that already had a good idea. And this is an A-tier episode just off that idea, and like the crap stuff alone, that's not even taking into account that Osamu hasn't even used his Beyblade angle compass yet, so that has to be explored. We still don't know much about you, have to see what happened to Kenta, and a really good battle that was about to take place between Kyoya and Hikaru hasn't even started yet. So this episode was an A-tier episode, but just imagine what the next episode is going to be, since it projects to be even better and have more action. So yeah, A-tier episode for sure. I love this episode. Episode 21, Warriors on a Solitary Island. This episode continues the survival battle arc as they got deeper into the tournament, now with less than 100 bladers left. Everything that was set up in the previous episode got explored. While they didn't get to finish their battle because they got interrupted by some other bladers, for the time that they got to battle, I liked Kyoya versus Hikaru. Really would have been nice if this battle took place in early Metal Fusion, like the first 8, 9, 10 episodes for a more level playing field. But even then, for the most level playing field that there could possibly be, it would have to be in like episodes 1 and 2 type stuff before before Hikaru even came into the picture, because once Kyoya went through that Dark Nebula training, he became like so clearly either a top 2 or top 3 blader in the Metal Bay City arc. So yeah, I'm not really disappointed at all, because Kyoya just probably wins this battle considering where he is at this point in the journey. But man, like yeah, this was definitely a battle that needed to happen. But you know what? Something that wasn't set up in the previous episode that was even better than Kyoya versus Hikaru was Kyoya versus Hyoma. You know how Hyoma was hiding from the gang in the beginning of the Koma Village arc, and Kyoya was the only one that got a weird feeling that they were being watched? Well, I like how that carried over into this episode. Like, he was the only one that clocked Hyoma hiding. Good thing that he got him out of there, because this battle was really nice. I say the tag team tournament like customization episode is part of the Koma Village arc, but really it's kind of like a bridge episode between the two arcs, because the customization that was shown off in that episode was shown off here in the survival battle, as Hyoma switched to a semi-flat performance tip to help him better traverse the terrain. However, that ended up playing a part in how he lost, as he didn't have enough defensive capabilities to stand up to Kyoya's final attack, which was funny because Kyoya started breaking down his hiding spots, and Hyoma thought that he got Leon right where he wanted him, just for his Ares to be surrounded by tornadoes. And like, he looked shocked, which is so funny because he was looking right at Ares right in front of him. So like, how did he miss that? But yeah, we finally got the battle that we were waiting for when Hyoma ran from the smoke, and the reason why is because he most likely would have lost. Like I said, can't have Hyoma losing at that point in the story back there. But yeah, it was really nice how Ginga's two rivals walked away from this battle developing a respectful rivalry of their own, which is nice that there's interesting stuff happening without Gingka. Then there was the Ulta plot, where they all wanted to make an amusement park, which is right up their alley because they were very amusing in this episode. It's like when they ran into Gingka and Madoka, they were surprised that these 2K generic auto-generated players made it that far, and like they made fun of them for needing a beginner's angle compass toy, which made Ulta get so mad. Now that Osamu has the angle compass, he's gonna get all the ladies, you know? There wasn't much interesting to explore with that, but it definitely led to some good entertainment. Like, this arc is so funny with characters like Mr. Krabs, Ulta, Kenji and Benben. Like, they're all giving some good entertainment. Speaking of Kenji and Benben, this is where we finally get to like actually meet Yu, and he didn't want to battle them at first because Kenta was injured, so he took them to a medical tent. And then that's where we learned that Yu and Kenta are alike because they're both little kids and have flame fusion will stamina types. Yu has a flame Libra. You know, back when I used to have Beyblades, I always considered Libra to be a better Beyblade, but I just couldn't stand the fact that I could never find a Sagittarial, so most of my analysis was based on like YouTube videos to like have that opinion of Libra being better than Sagittarial. But yeah, the Eternal Sharp performance tip is better. Like, it functions similarly to Ares' Eternal Defense spin track, but stylistically, I just like Sagittarial's claws better. I just felt like it was a more unique feature. That's why I wanted it more than Libra. Anyways, Yu was going to carry Kenji and Benben to the finals until Hikaru challenged them to a 4-way every person for themselves type of battle, which I'm all for. I definitely wish that the battle like would have been longer, but there was some good stuff in there. I like that Hikaru sort of got a 1-up on Kenta after Kenta figured out her special move all those episodes ago, showing that she's been putting in some work. But they were all quickly dominated by Libra's Antlion Trap into Inferno Blast combination, which they didn't say that Yu won. Like, they ended the episode off on a cliffhanger, but come on now. So yeah, this is definitely an A-tier episode for everything that I just explained. The 4-way battle was probably the weakest part of the episode, then I'd probably put Hikaru versus Kyoya in third in front of that, but the Ulta storyline and Kyoya versus Hyoma were the absolute highlights of this episode. There was nothing bad about this episode, so it's going to get an A grade. Episode 22, The Fearsome Libra. In this episode, after Yu beat Kenji, Benben, and Hippity Hop, they're down to the final 4. Yu, Jingi, Yo-Yo, and I don't know what you would call Madoka. Like, I guess Madoki? But yeah, like, they get to battle in this big stadium and everyone was watching them, which is nice that they didn't like all just go home or whatever. Like, they all stayed to watch the grand event, you know? They want to see these guys get the daylight beat out of them by Madoka. But yeah, like, it starts out with Kyoya underestimating this kid, but he got really frustrated when Yu was taunting him and like calling him Yo-Yo and saying that if he beat Gingka, then Kyoya can't face him. And of course that got Kyoya amped up to battle because that's his #1 rival. Like, that's his #1 goal, to beat Gingka. So they all launched their Beyblades out except for Madoka. But yeah, like, this battle was really kind of like 2 separate 1v1s. Like, not technically, but these battles were kind of focused. Anyways, through these battles, we get to learn more about Libra, like how the Eternal Sharp performance tip prevents it from scraping on the ground a lot, and like it's able to recover, giving it an insane ability to just like survive, you know? Also, not an original point, like I'm completely taking this from someone else. I forgot like which video this is, probably one of those like Beyblade is insane videos, but like yeah, I heard this point maybe 2 or 3 years back talking about this episode, so I'm just gonna say it now. Why is Madoka allowed to have this laptop? When they were just in the metal based city and like they were just having some friendly battles around town, then like whatever, I guess, but this is a competition right here, and being able to look up data on other Beyblades is a big advantage. WBBA said no cheating, so disqualify her right now. But obviously they can't, because the story needs her for exposition dumping and like explaining what's going on, you know? Anyways, the first half was more Kyoya and Yu focused, and Yu actually commanded serious respect from Kyoya when he was able to just easily break through his Lion Gale Force wall, which made Kyoya go with the Tearing Blast. But because of the damage that he took in the battle with Hyoma, Leon was going to break if it used its special move any longer. When Madoka was analyzing the situation, it only really showed its spin track and performance tip breaking, so like, doesn't she have spare parts as a mechanic? Like, can't she fix it, I guess? Or is Leon just like a special Beyblade, like it won't respond to other parts? That's why they need to save it. Like I'm just wondering. Anyways, because of this, Madoka, the greatest blader ever, had to launch her Beyblade into the Tearing Blast and stop it, which I've got to say, wow, Kyoya has to be frustrated. He got 2 of his special moves broken through in the same battle, and his best special move got broken through by a mechanic that doesn't even Beyblade for real. That's tough, not gonna lie. But it's like, yeah, that got him to finally realize how dire the situation was, so unfortunately, he had to forfeit the competition, which was unsatisfying. I know we're gonna get Yu versus Kyoya later, like, you know, later on in the series, not this season, but like, man, I feel like Kyoya did everything right. He dominated, and his friends even talked about how he could get his special move off faster. No guarantee that he wins this tournament. Like, what if the Tearing Blast wasn't strong enough for Inferno Blast? But man, it feels like Kyoya got robbed here in a very winnable tournament. Like, yeah, this would have been really nice for him to win, not gonna lie. His resume isn't all that amazing, taking multiple losses in like the weakest arc of the show, especially very early on, so winning here would have been big for him, but that just wasn't in the cards, and it gives some validity to Hyoma's strategy of just like avoiding a lot of those battles, I would say. Kyoya's loss set up Gingka versus Yu, which is what I guess everyone was waiting for. He could either get a rematch with Kyoya or try to take down the new big bad, which are both good options. Anyways, Gingka and Yu were evenly matched until Yu used his Inferno Blast, and I've got to say, it's so funny how when Gingka used his special move, they were playing that Gingka theme song, the Pegasus theme song, and everyone thought that he won, just for Pegasus to get blown out of the stadium. Oh my gosh, that was so funny. Like, whenever you hear that music, you know you're in trouble, unless your name is Yu. It was a discouraging loss, but at least for some optimism, Pegasus left Libra wobbling some, which doesn't matter if it's an automatic stadium out or like sleep out when touching the Inferno Blast, but it is good to know, like it is something at least. Anyways, the episode ends with Yu proposing Battle Bladers as his wish, and the episode ends there. So just imagine, like back in 2009, 2010, you had to wait like a whole week to see what they were talking about, which is smart, but man, what a cliffhanger. But yeah, I'm gonna give this episode a B. I didn't find the battle or the episode to be quite as exciting as what came before, but it's still good. I liked how they showed off just how far that Kyoya has come, like he's gotten stronger for sure. Also, Madoka entering the battle was interesting, never before seen aspect, making me wonder like, how's that gonna work? Like, she has good aim, maybe she should try real Beyblading sometimes. And I would say the overall battles against Libra, they were fine battles, like good enough. So this episode is going to get a B. Good episode, good arc. Episode 23, The Road to the Battle Bladers. It's the beginning of the Road to Battle Bladers arc. So basically, you proposed this Battle Bladers idea, which is a tournament between the strongest bladers in Japan, and to qualify, you need 50k Bay points. So look at that. The Bay points that were basically used for nothing in the Metal Bay City arc finally have a use. Everyone was basically rocking with this idea until Doji showed up and revealed Yu to be part of the Dark Nebula organization. And with Doji wanting to sponsor and manage the tournament rather than having the WBBA take full control and having Ryuga show up, it was clear that this tournament was only a way for El Drago to gain more power. Madoka complained about it, but the road to Battle Bladers was already in action and tournaments were already set up. So the main four, Gingka, Kyoya, Kenta, and Benkei, just had to find some positives in this situation and talk about how they're going to train hard to beat each other in this tournament because Gingka and Kyoya are rivals. As they were about to leave the Metal Bay City and go on their own paths, they had one last battle at the Coliseum with friends and foes that they met along the way. And yeah, this kind of ends this introductory type arc. The real introductory arc was over with at the conclusion of the Metal Bay City arc, but what I would say is that this is basically the ending of Act 1 in a 3-act season, and now they're finally leaving town and splitting up to go on their own road to Battle Bladers journey. I'll give this episode a D. There wasn't much action in this episode. It's mainly just explaining Battle Bladers and like contemplating and such. When they attempted to have some action, while I appreciated this reunion vibe, a lot of these characters that we met in this first act coming together for one last battle before they all go in their separate ways, I like that feeling, which saves this episode from getting an F. But yeah, like the battle was kind of lame. It happened like very late into the episode and it was basically just a special move fest. Probably would have been better if it was like an actual battle. Maybe it could have been its own episode, but that would probably like basically delay the road to Battle Bladers for another week, so that's understandable. But yeah, good setup episode, but not an entertaining one, so it's gonna get a D grade. Episode 24, The Beautiful Eagle. This episode really kicks off the road to Battle Bladers arc in terms of tournaments and such. We don't necessarily get to see like full-scale battles, but in the beginning, it shows everyone just like handling business in these tournaments, easily winning against lower competition with their special moves. Not the most exciting battles, but it's at least like checking in with them and like creating a living, breathing world around Gingka, which is much appreciated. They had to leave Madoka behind, which I can't decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because while she's part of the gang, she was kind of like a chatterbox and she was so OP. Like she's a mechanic, she can cook, like she's basically Google and like she knows everything, like always has like that laptop and everything. So it's like, I don't know, she's OP. So like sidelining her will give her a chance for everyone to be more independent and like it will leave more room and like screen time for more bladers, just like the one that Gingka met in this episode. When Gingka was getting jumped by some point hunters, base hunter style, Tsubasa Otori flew in and just destroyed all of them with his Earth Eagle. I would say that he's sort of similar to Hyoma from early on in the Koma Village arc. He's clearly a strong blader because he took all of them out and like he has a bunch of bay points, but also like he's just such a mysterious guy. He knows Gingka's full name and he knows his main goal, but he never really follows up on it. But yeah, they're both competing in the same tournament, so basically what's going to happen is that all throughout the episode, Tsubasa is going to give Gingka advice, which will eventually help Gingka to beat Tsubasa in the final round of this tournament. But Gingka realized that Tsubasa was holding back and that like he was sort of testing him, I would say. Gingka tried to ask Tsubasa why he helped him, but the mysterious guy just kind of like brushed it off and like, till they meet again, like I guess I'll give this episode a B. It's a fine episode. Like I said, I like that they're building a living, breathing world around Gingka, showing the success of his friends. Now, none of the battles were like really all that interesting, especially since Tsubasa was holding back, but he's an interesting character for sure, and like I liked his role in this episode. I also liked how Gingka used his advice to become a better blader. I also kind of like how sort of ominous the ending is. Like we still don't know a ton about Tsubasa. He still has some questions to answer, but you just know that they're gonna cross paths again, which just keeps you watching. So that's a masterclass in storytelling right there, and it's gonna get a B grade. Episode 25, The Sniper Capricorn. This episode is a Kyoya episode. Not necessarily exclusively because Gingka and Madoka are going to be like watching this battle and like making comments from afar, but he's in the spotlight and the only person in the gang that does something important in this episode. So basically, Kyoya was tired of battling these 2K generic brown shirt and gray sweatpants auto-generated players. That is, until he was told about the mysterious small town legend, Captain Capri, Tobio Oike. He's basically a sniper, like he has a whole briefcase and gear and such, like it's Hitman or something. And he just like basically one-shots bladers with his Storm Capricorn from afar, like no one's ever seen him, it seems. Tobio wanted to challenge Kyoya to a battle, but Kyoya ignored him, so like he just kept on following him around town with his Capricorn, even going into his hotel room, which is very wild. But Kyoya agreed to battle him at the tournament, where Tobio showed off some cool techniques, like launching Capricorn at a certain angle to control where it bounced, creating some controlled chaos. But by the time of the finals, he already showed so much to the point that Kyoya was just able to beat him very easily. And yeah, like they both like sort of respected each other a bit and just went their separate ways after this, like as rivals. I'm gonna give this episode a B. It's actually kind of like mid, but it gets points for creativity. It's basically a full episode without Gingka, only really focusing on Kyoya, which is nice to see because he's an interesting character, a strong blader, and like that deserves to be explored. He deserves to be explored. Also nice that the road to battle bladers isn't all happening off screen for the others, and like we get to see some of their journey, this being a full episode. I absolutely love that. However, it kind of fell a bit flat because Tobio was a weak opponent. Speaking of weak, when I used to play with Beyblades, Storm Capricorn was one of the first Beyblades that my brother and I got. First, we got a stadium, the Super Vortex battle set that included like special versions or like different colored versions of Pegasus and El Drago. Then I forgot like if we got it with the stadium or like we just went and got more Beyblades shortly after, like separately. But we did get a 2-pack which contains Storm Capricorn and Rock Gasher, which isn't an anime Beyblade, that Rock Gasher. I got the Rock Gasher and my brother got the Storm Capricorn. It's the Walmart version of Rock Leone versus Storm Pegasus. But yeah, Storm Capricorn was so garbage, especially since our stadium had walls, so like there was really no stadium outlets, I would say. Both of the molds were kind of bad and it kind of just bounced around until it got taken down, which was very easy because sure, attack types have low stamina, but this thing could like barely stay up. Like the only viable way to win would be stadium mounts, which we just didn't have access to. But yeah, that's just a memory. Getting back to the episode, Tobio just didn't provide that much of a challenge for Kyoya, so although Tobio's strategy was definitely interesting, like at the end of the day, he lost very decisively and his battle with Kyoya like wasn't all that. I absolutely love the idea of a solo Kyoya episode and like him going out there and making his own rivals, which is why I'd lean towards giving it more than a C because of that concept alone, but the battle wasn't entertaining, so it can't get anything higher than a B. Episode 26, Tsubasa Flies into the Dark. It's yet another Gingka-less episode where he's just looking on. I always have to really mention that because I must say I'm just absolutely shocked at how good this show is at developing the supporting cast. A lot of shows that I watch just pick like a main character to just go with, even if it's an ensemble cast, but man, this show is special. I love how they're dedicating full episodes to see the journeys of others. Anyways, this episode was about the mysterious Tsubasa. You see, after winning this tournament and beating Kumosuke Kumade, a Dark Nebula member, he wanted to join the Dark Nebula for some reason. So Doji did all of this research on him and couldn't find much until at night, Tsubasa showed up at his headquarters and asked for a job. Basically, that's what happened, which Doji denied, so Tsubasa had to explain that someone could potentially disrupt his plans and it's always good to have strong bladers on his side. So that interested Doji and he tested Tsubasa, first against the Kumade brothers, Kumosuke, Kumata, and Kumaji, and their Rock Orso Beyblades, which he defeated easily. Then he was matched up with Yu, eager to battle because Yu was going to have to wait a long time before he could battle again. However, this battle didn't go well for him because Tsubasa kept on calling him a little boy and had counters for like everything in his arsenal. His eagle could fly or glide over the sand that Libra created, and he was able to break through Libra's Inferno Blast and force a tie, although he revealed that he was not using his true power yet. That's a scary thought because if he tied with Yu, and Yu is only one of 2 bladers to beat Gingka in a legit battle, not really counting Mr. Krabs and Osamu, but yeah, then that means that right now, Tsubasa is a top 3 blader in the series, and apparently, he was holding back. He didn't tell Yu, but he said that he was testing Gingka just like he was testing Yu, and he'll battle them for real someday. Because Tsubasa performed really well in this battle, Doji gave him the job and the episode ended there. I'll give this episode a B grade. First off, I'm not really the biggest fan of you, so I absolutely love how he got humbled after being so unstoppable in the survival battle arc, so that's a win, showing that there's better and stronger bladers out there. But also, I just like how mysterious Tsubasa is. Like, he's kind of sneaking through the Dark Nebula base, talking about how he's holding back power. Like, that's an interesting storyline. However, I'm not going to give it an A because the battles weren't all that. Like, they were alright, but Tsubasa kind of dominated, so that's why it gets a B. Episode 27, Intruders in the Challenge Match. This episode focused on multiple characters other than Gingka. Of course, he was in it, but from afar. He was getting interviewed and Madoka was watching, like commenting on the battles that were going on. Blader DJ actually had a larger presence in this episode, you know, commentating and like announcing for the battles. I like Blader DJ because I watch a lot of Charlotte Hornets basketball, and Eric Collins has some electric calls, unlike some other commentators in that league. He makes the game fun and his energy reminds me of Blader DJ. Anyways, this episode is focused on Kenta and Hyoma, the good guys, versus Tsubasa and Yu, the bad guys. Basically what happened was that Kenta and Hyoma met at this sort of like two-way tournament, or it's like two separate tournaments taking place at the valley. They're giving out the same amount of Bay points, so like they had to decide which stadium was best for them, in the forest or by the river. They both chose different paths, Kenta in the forest and Hyoma by the river, and like I like the point that Hyoma brought up. They're going to be competing for the same points if they battle in the same stadium. At least this way, everyone can have their unique journey and possibly come out on top in the end, which is nice. Plus, Kenta and Hyoma already battled, so that makes sense. Then on the Dark Nebula side, Doji wanted to keep a close eye on Gingka and his friends, so he sent Tsubasa and Yu out to the tournament to monitor them, like get some data and like track their progress type stuff. Very nice plan. So yeah, after Kenta and Hyoma advanced to the finals after beating a bunch of generics, Yu and Tsubasa just showed up out of nowhere like, where's the security? The woman at the front desk told them they couldn't enter and put up a bad defense, or like really no defense at all, and like just let them walk right in. Like, where is the security? But you want to know some unfairness? Yu interrupted a battle between two randoms that were trying to qualify for the finals and asked Hyoma if he was okay with this, which he was, so like can't really feel that much sympathy if he loses to Yu because like he agreed to it. But what about the other bladers that were just battling? Didn't ask them if it was okay, and like they worked so hard to get to that round. Kind of like the same thing that happened with Kenta, like they didn't ask the other competitors if it was okay, which makes no sense, but it's good that's happening because then it's just an easy win for Kenta and Hyoma against some randoms. Like at least they're getting some comp. They agreed to the battles. However, Hyoma wanted to pick a stadium in the river where he thought that Yu couldn't use his special move. I was interested in this battle because it's the battle of the Eternal Defense Spin Track versus the Eternal Sharp Performance Tip, so that was interesting to see how they were gonna like use them, and both of them used them really well. Ares blocked Libra's attack and pushed him to the edge, and Libra raced along the edge because it had nice balance because of that performance tip. However, Hyoma lost because Libra's supersonic waves can push away water, which is just way too OP in my opinion. I can admit that even though I don't like the result, or how they got to that result rather, I can say that this was the best Beyblade battle of the episode. On the other hand, Eagle was giving Sagittario a beating to the point where Kenta wanted to give up, but Tsubasa, weirdly enough, helped Kenta, which is kind of continuing on like his storyline of helping Gingka and his friends somewhat. He told him not to look away and that Sagittario hasn't given up, which inspired Kenta to get back in this battle as well and bait Eagle into an attack to counter with Flame Claw, which happened, but Tsubasa was able to overpower him with Metal Wing Smash. At the end, there's a bit of like a somber tone because the heroes lost, but then like they weirdly just started glazing Gingka and left, agreeing to meet at Battle Bladers. This is an A tier episode. Like I said, focusing on the journeys of others is always going to get some extra points tacked on. Also, although I didn't like the plot armor, I like the concept of this episode. We're just so used to seeing our heroes win so much. How about some losses to even things out and show that Gingka's friends aren't at the top of the world and like they still have a long way to go until they can qualify for Battle Bladers. I used to think that it was a bad episode because the bad guys won, but I like it. Like it's a necessary episode to ground these characters. So yeah, A grade for sure. Episode 28. Dark Gasher's Big Krabby Operation. Alright, so this episode has Gingka in it and he finally gets to battle, finally focusing on the main character again. But despite that, this was really a Tetsuya and Dark Nebula episode. You see, what happened was, Yu was sent to this tournament to scout for strong bladers, and when he got bored and couldn't find any, Tetsuya followed him home to the Dark Nebula and asked to join the squad. Doji didn't see much use for him as a team member because he was pathetic, but he saw it as a good opportunity to test out his Beyblade remodeling system and track the data, so he turned Mad Gasher into Dark Gasher, continuing the theme of Doji giving out Dark Base. First Benkei's Dark Bull, now Tetsuya's Dark Gasher, and he has a Dark Wolf. I actually have a real life story time about like a real life Dark Gasher Beyblade, but I'll save that for later, like after the episode grade, I guess. So Doji told him about a tournament that Gingka was in, and we get to see that Gingka and Benkei's roads took them to the same place, kind of like Hyoma and Kenta, but since there was only one tournament, only one could be victorious. But come on. The Benkei and Gingka final match was never happening. Why would they give Mr. Krabs a new Beyblade just to barely get any usage out of him? So when Krabby met Jingy and Benny, he was acting all nice, like he changed to lure them into a false sense of security, just like he did in the beginning of this episode when he made the crowd and his opponents cry about his late friend, which got him the win, but they all got mad when they found out that it was a spider crab. Come on, so crab lives don't matter? They were really mad, but that was like so funny. But yeah, here, even with the new Beyblade, the new strength, when he was getting overpowered by Benny, he tried the same tactic to get him to let his guard down and unleash his new special move, 6 Crab Shake, defeating Benkei. But because he revealed his strategy and his new special move, that really just paved the way for an easy win for Gingka in the finals because he wasn't falling for any of those games. While Mr. Krabs failed, it was a Dark Nebula success because the data came back positive, possibly meaning that they'll use the machine to remodel more Beyblades in the future, and that's how it ends. I'm gonna give this episode a B. It's a fine episode, but kind of like the case for most of the episodes that I didn't give A's to, the battles just didn't interest me a ton. Like in the Captain Capri episode, Kyoya dealt with Tobio swiftly, and Gingka dealt with Krabby swiftly, so like that's really all it is. But I absolutely love the concept of remodeling a Beyblade, and just Tetsuya's return in general was fun because I like his antics, and it's like nice to see this joke of a guy get some new power. Definitely not enough to beat Gingka, probably not even enough to beat Benkei in a completely like honest, real fight. But hey, dishonesty is part of his strategy, so I like how he's becoming a better blader, like in any way possible, I would say. However, not that the episode is getting knocked for this, like I already decided on a B grade before this idea, but what if this episode had a different outcome maybe? Like maybe it could have been better. I always hear about how Gingka gets too much plot armor or like too much screen time and such, and I just thought that like, hey, with the recent focus on the other characters, this could have been a really nice Benkei episode. They could still have Gingka in this episode, but have him lose to Mr. Krabs. Then he meets Benkei in the finals where Benkei has to take him down for Gingka, and like he could finally get an important win under his belt. This episode seemed like the absolute perfect time for that, but that just wasn't the case. Also, at the time, I definitely wanted Gingka to lose and like maybe Tetsuya could get a win because even back then, I could see the plot armor and favoritism. What I'm saying is, anything other than Gingka winning would have been a better option. But it's hard to complain a bunch when they are being really balanced. Like they are making Gingka lose to Ryuga and Yu, and like they're making episodes about other characters, so this show is more well-rounded than I originally gave it credit for. But yeah, in the end, it gets a B grade. Alright, now that I'm done with the Dark Gasher episode, time for a real life story time for when I had Beyblades. Okay, so this was 3rd grade, and by this point, my brother and I had a decent collection of Beyblades, and at our school, Beyblade was so big, like everyone had Beyblades, and sometimes like someone would bring a stadium, but like other times we would just use like a lid or something. Anyways, that's the reason why these Beyblades were at school in the first place. So like, yeah, I brought some of mine and had them out like while sitting in the gym waiting for the day to start. Then this guy, like I know his actual name, but I'll just call him Matthew. Like I had my Beyblades in this one spot. Then a few minutes later, I saw them near his bag, so I assumed he was slowly inching them closer until he could take them. So I kind of confronted him like, what is this? And took them back, and like he kind of tried to play it off. Then there was a time when I brought my Dark Gasher to school, super rare, or like at least I believed it was, because I could never like actually find another one. But like, yeah, I only had it for about 3 weeks, and I really liked it because it was unique. Like it had a mode change, and for my personal collection, I didn't really have a lot of mode changers. So I brought it to school one day, had it out in the same spot, went the whole day without even looking in my bag. But by the end of the day, I realized that my Dark Gasher was missing. I did not see that guy. I have no evidence at all, but like based on that past experience and his interest in Beyblades, I assumed that Matthew took it. So it was a tricky situation because I don't know if Beyblades were necessarily banned at the school. Like, why would everyone bring them if they were banned? But I think it was kind of like heavily discouraged, or like not seen as legit, making the process tricky because if I complain, they could probably just shut me down by saying you're not supposed to have it anyways, and like they're not responsible for it. I ended up reporting it, and like we had to go to the principal's office, and he said that he didn't have it. So like that was that. Now, I could have just lost it, like that's a possibility, but I just can't get that image out of my head. Like when my brother and I caught him, he kind of just like laughed it off and lied. So like if he could lie once, he could lie again. But I'm also open to the fact that like I just really don't know if he took it or not. Like I just factually did not see him. But after that, I made sure to be more cautious. Like I was always protective, but I had to dial it up even more. Like stop taking all of my Beyblades out and displaying them like it's a fashion show or something. Like only take them out like one at a time just for battles. And yeah, that's what happened. Also, remember how I said that Dark Gasher was rare, or at least like on my side of town? Well, because of that, I was not able to get another one, which hurt me because it was such a unique Beyblade. I don't know if they were selling these online at the time, but I only really had access to Target and Walmart, and like maybe a Toys R Us later on down the line, like possibly the next year, but by that time it was Metal Master's time. But yeah, it's not like I had access to the internet like that, and like it's not like I could just get it on Amazon or something. If they didn't have a Beyblade that I wanted at the store, then I was just out of luck, and that's how I missed out on another Dark Gasher and Beyblades like Leon, Aquario, Wolf, Orso, Sagittario, and getting a bit ahead in this series, but I also missed out on Gemios. Really unfortunate because now I'm an adult, like I have a job, I can buy my own stuff, especially using the internet, but one, I'm not really interested in Beyblades anymore. Like I don't have time for Beyblade battles with my brother anymore since we're both busy, and like I just don't have friends to battle with. But also because it's 2025, or like maybe 2026, depending on when I decide to release this video. But yeah, because of that, they're not making these products anymore, and like the only way to get one is to like pay up big time or get a mid-fake. I don't know if I have a kid audience, or like if a kid is watching this, or like if anyone is watching this really, but just learn from my story. That's what I would say, learn from it. I think it still applies today since I know that Beyblade Burst and Beyblade X exist. I have not watched any other generation of Beyblade other than Metal Fight. I have not looked into the toys, but like, yeah, be careful. Don't make the same mistake that I made. Anyways, yeah, that was a lengthy story. I gave the episode a B grade. Now it's time for the next episode. Episode 29, Kenta and Sora. Despite not being a Gingka episode that he was really in like that, it is about Gingka glazing for sure. So, everyone's well off into their Battle Bladers journey. Kenta's on a roll. He's competing in this tournament until a mysterious Sora Akatsuki entered the arena, which I've got to say, in the previous tournament that Kenta and Hyoma went to and Yu and Tsubasa broke in, no security guards. But in this tournament, there's security guards, which Sora easily beat, but like, yeah, where's the consistency? I can't even say that it's because the stadium is like bigger and more modern than the battles that happen in the Tsubasa and Yu like Intruder episode, because they're both WBBA tournaments at the end of the day. Like, this is so unimportant, but since I opened that door, I have to close it. Anyways, Sora went on yapping about how he's Ginka's #1 apprentice, which got Kenta's attention, and he used a Cyber Pegasus Beyblade, which has a different colored fusion wheel, and he calls it Cyber rather than its last name like the other Beyblades. When they eventually battled, he shocked everyone with a Star Blast attack. I think it's Star Blast attack rather than Cyber Star Blast attack, and he's just calling his Beyblade Cyber. That would actually make a lot of sense considering what's coming up later in this episode. But yeah, anyways, he tried to use Ginka's move, but turned into a laughingstock when it failed. Now this was so funny, like he came in so confident, then got embarrassed and ran away. Anyways, later on, Kenta found him practicing his special move, and the situation was explained that Sora isn't Jinga's apprentice. It's just that Gingka came by his town and competed in a tournament and inspired him to start Beyblading for real. So I'm guessing that this is relatively recent, like in the midst of this Battle Bladers arc when he started Beyblading. Even if it wasn't in this arc, Gingka looks the same, so this had to have happened like so recently that Sora's only been blading for real like for, I don't know what the timeline is looking like, but I'm guessing it's been like a month or two since the beginning of the show, maybe? That's not confirmed, but like just kind of vibes, I would say. But yeah, it makes sense why Sora, despite having a good Beyblade in Cyber, doesn't really understand his Beyblade because he's kind of new. But yeah, Kenta revealed that he's Jinga's friend and they bonded. Eventually, before the day of this tournament, when Sora was practicing Star Blast attack, now Kenta gets to take on a teaching role, take on the Gingka role, basically explaining to him that maybe Cyber has its own way of battling and he doesn't need to be exactly like Gingka to be a great blader. So when they got to the challenge the next day, it wasn't a battle, like it was more of an obstacle course race, which is a very good idea after seeing a bunch of battles, like it's a nice change of pace. Anyways, through this challenge and getting pushed to the limit, when he and Sagittario had to push some logs, that got Sora to unleash his new special move, Avalanche move, and I'm like, really? I'm rooting for Sora, but come on, that special move sounds so lame in comparison to some others like Darkness Howling Blazer and King Lion Tearing Blast. But I guess the better you are, the cooler your special move sounds. Anyways, it's a completely original special move, check, but it ended in a stadium out, giving Kenta the win. After that, they agreed to go their separate ways because although Cyber was somewhat out of control, Sora wanted to learn his Beyblade and go in their separate ways, and hopefully they meet again as rivals, and like that's the episode. I'm definitely gonna give this episode an A grade. It's such a good episode that puts Kenta in a mentor position, which is great for his development and shows just how far he's come since the beginning to like even be in a position where he has a special move and like he's giving wisdom to someone else about creating a special move that fits his Beyblade style of battling. This is really nice for Kenta, and I like the concept of Sora. First off, in the beginning, like he's a good laughing stock, but I like the idea of him firstly like seeing the impact that Gingka left on the Beyblade world to like where someone wants to be exactly like him, but also I like the concept of him being a relatively new but growing blader that we might get to check in with sometime down the line and see his progress. Also, it's a good life lesson episode. Although Sora lost in the end, he was able to create a special move, so it's teaching you that you are unique and like you don't need to be a copycat to gain success, which I like that's nice. Definitely an A tier episode. Before I get to the next episode, since it's the Cyber Pegasus episode, I must talk about real life again. So I had a Cyber Pegasus, but it wasn't the one that was shown in the anime. Like it was a blue one that looked more standardized. Same exact Beyblade, but like just with no paint job. But man, having a real Cyber Pegasus would have been so nice. Now apparently it comes with the DS game, but either I didn't get the special edition or like maybe I rented the game from this service called Gamefly, in which like it wouldn't come with the Beyblade, like just the cartridge. Both are plausible, but that's how I never got that version of Cyber. But it didn't hurt that much because like I already technically had a Cyber. Also, speaking of the games, I just didn't like the Metal Fusion DS game because like I was so bad at it. I preferred the Metal Fusion Battle Fortress game for the Wii over the DS game, and my absolute favorite Beyblade game was the Metal Masters one for DS. But man, just talking about the Beyblade toys and the TV series, and like they had the video games, like man, this stuff was on top of the world, and those were some good days for sure. Anyways, yeah, A tier episode, moving on. Episode 30, The Bewitching Pisces. This is the start of a mini arc within the Road to Battle Bladers arc that I'll just call the Glintsville City Tournament arc, or like maybe like the Battle Royale, even though like the Battle Royal happened at the end of this arc, but like yeah, they said Glintsville City, so I'm just gonna go with it. But yeah, it's a big family reunion of sorts as all of our heroes reconvened at this tournament. Even Madoka and the Dark Nebula members, Yu and Tsubasa, although the main gang didn't know they were there yet. I guess Ota just aren't relevant anymore, but like yeah, that's kind of expected. They're beginners and now everyone's getting stronger and we're meeting new characters like Tsubasa, Tobio, and Sora, so like I guess they're just gonna get lost in the shuffle. It's crazy to think about how like they were top tier bladers in the first arc of the show, and now they're probably like barely top 20 and just like forgotten about basically. Imagine if they made a spin-off for them and a whole new tournament idea called Baby Bladers, where like if you get say like 20k points, you qualify. Just an idea. Anyways, they're in this city for this big tournament that'll grant 10k points, to which Gingka and Kyoya both have 40k plus points. So this is basically a Battle Bladers entry tournament for them, because if they win, they'd get the 50k they need to qualify for Battle Bladers, which made Benkei mad that Gingka was competing in such a big tournament when he didn't even need all of those points. After everyone but Kyoya reconvened, they saw this fortune teller guy, Ryuga Fukami, you know, fortune telling and such, and like wanted to get a reading until Kyoya showed up, talking down on it, saying that you don't believe in yourself enough if you need a reading from someone else. But it was funny seeing this guy Kyoya, this tough guy, going his usual spiel about wanting to beat Gingka. Then these guys wanted him to shut up so they could hear Ryuga. That's so funny because he's such a menacing guy, and it just ruined his little like over dramatic speech. But yeah, they meet the guy Ryuga. They're all impressed because his Pisces is magical. Then when they get to the battle the next day, he had to battle Gingka, where he was falling victim to all of his magic tricks, but eventually broke through because it wasn't magic. It was just Pisces changing the airflow and air pressure. So Pegasus created a vacuum and took the air away. This won Gingka the match and advanced him further into the tournament. I'll give this episode a C. I just love the family reunion of it all. That's the only reason why this episode is passing. I just don't like Ryuga. I don't like the fortune teller stuff, and he's boring. His battle style is boring, and the battle was less of an action-packed battle and sort of like a strategic, psychological battle, like something like that, I guess. It went to this sort of like special sort of thermal Pisces world, and most of that time was spent with the main characters explaining what's going on and Gingka just kind of like standing there hurting. I'll definitely give this episode a C, which is a little bit unfortunate, like that's how I'm ending my day. I watch these episodes in sets of 5. I watch 5 every day, so it's unfortunate to end on a kind of mid episode. But good thing it's part of a mini arc, so while this episode was kind of mid, the next few episodes are really going to define how I view the overall experience. Episode 31, The Twin Gemios. Alright, so this episode is basically a bunch of battles, 4 battles to advance in the tournament. Before getting into the battles, I would say some things of importance would be that in the last match, Gingka didn't know that he created a vacuum, and like they kind of harped on it for a bit, so that little move might be important coming up later, like you never know. Also in this episode, the main gang finally found out that the Dark Nebula and Yu and Tsubasa were there, and like they were surprised to find out that Tsubasa was part of the Dark Nebula, which painted Gingka's battle with Tsubasa in a whole new light because he knew that he held back. Now he had an idea that Tsubasa was testing him for the Dark Nebula. Anyways, getting to the battles, I guess I'll rate them. The worst battle was Yu versus a random. Like it was barely even a battle. Yu was looking away at the other battles. Really would have been a nice time for him to get humbled, but nah, he still has that Dark Nebula aura around him, like this mini boss type of energy. Like he's still only taken one real loss to Ryuga and tied with Tsubasa, so they still have to keep this perception that he's a strong character, that he's this fearsome Libra, so it's more satisfying when he's eventually taken out later on down the line. I would say that in third place, it's Benkei versus Tsubasa because at least they got to use their special moves, but like that was over with quickly as Tsubasa won easily. I thought this was going to be a more competitive battle, but nah, like it just showed the skill gap. Benkei was top tier in the Metal Bay City arc. Now he's getting like own. But like I said in the Gasher episode, it didn't have to be this way. He could have had a major win going into this if he beat Krabby, so this loss wouldn't feel as bad or like a letdown. But no. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, those 2 battles were nothing burgers. In second place, it's Hikaru versus Kyoya, a rematch from the survival battle, which at the time of writing that stuff about the survival battle and harping on them like not getting a real match, I actually did not know that they actually would get a rematch. I've not really watched Beyblade since like maybe 2013, maybe 2014, I would say, because like I have vivid memories of watching a little bit of Zero G. But yeah, that's still like more than a decade, so I don't know everything. Of course, I still remember some very memorable battles from this series, but not every battle, so this was definitely a pleasant surprise for sure. Unfortunately, the battle wasn't like the cinematic experience that I was hoping for, because like they had to juggle 3 other battles in addition to this one, and now at this point in the story, Kyoya is just so much stronger than Hikaru, but at least she made him work a bit. Like she was able to somewhat dodge the King Lion Tearing Blast with Aquario's illusions and push him to the brink of a stadium out, but that was the closest that she got. Lion Gale Force Wall for the win. Speaking of Kyoya's special moves, what happened to Fang Fury? Like, what happened to Fang Dance? Bring him out every once in a while. But yeah, the best battle was Kenta versus Dan and Reiki, which at the time when like I first watched this in like 2010, I had no idea that these guys were the same exact guys from the Dark Nebula like headquarters invasion from the Forbidden Bay arc. I guess because they have like slightly different outfits, and like they had 2 Beyblades back then, that made me think that they were like different characters. Like when watching that again, I realized, oh, these are the Gimios twins. Let me pay attention to how they got their evil Gimios. So yeah, it turns out that they took their loss to Kyoya to heart and started working as a team to cover up their weaknesses. And that Beyblade remodeling machine that Doji used on Matt Gasher to create Dark Gasher, he used it to create evil Gimios, just continuing that trend of like sort of dark Beyblades, evil Beyblades, I would say. Doji has a Dark Wolf. He created Dark Bull, Dark Gasher, evil Gimio. So I wonder what type of evil name he could come up with next. We're just gonna have to stick around and like find out. But yeah, they got matched up with Kenta in the tournament and got to control the Beyblade together, which brings up the question, like, is this even fair? It's one Beyblade, but like you're going up against 2 minds. There was kind of a similar, like not so similar concept in the season following of bladers that like always wanted to battle together, but they both had separate Beyblades and wanted to team battles. Like that's more fair than what Dan and Reiki had going on. Anyways, Evil Gimios was an interesting Beyblade because it had great stamina, but also the fusion wheel had an upper and lower part that served different purposes for defensive and offensive purposes. Man, I wish I had a Gimios. Like this is the coolest Beyblade so far. But the battle started to unravel for the Gimios twins when they argued over the strategy, either stalling or attacking, which left an opening for Kenta to get the best of them. I like that when he was trying to get up and like inspire himself, he talked about how Sagittario hasn't stopped spinning, so he won't give up on it. Kind of similar to what Tsubasa told him in the Intruders episode. And when he won, Tsubasa looked kind of proud of him from afar. I like that detail that like I finally realized this time around, and it shows that we still might not know what Tsubasa is really up to. I'm gonna give this episode an A grade. Of course, the U battle and like the Benkei and Tsubasa battles were like nothing burgers, which was really unfortunate because I thought they could have got a little bit more out of Eagle versus Bull. Like I thought that Tsubasa and Benkei were like some really strong bladers, but I guess Tsubasa's just on another level, and like they had to get some of those battles done quickly to focus on the real action. Pretty much Kyoya versus Hikaru and Kenta versus the Gimios twins carries. Like that's the only reason why this episode is getting an A. While the Aquario versus Leon battle wasn't like what I really wanted, it was still good enough, and the Kenta battle was the best because he's becoming stronger, finally beating serious opponents and using advice that he gets to become a stronger blader. Also, I have a twin, so I really enjoyed the Gimios twins like style of battling in this episode and in the previous episode that they battled in the Forbidden Bay arc, the Dark Nebula infiltration arc. So yeah, nice rebound from the previous episode, definitely an A tier episode. Episode 32, the Stormy Battle Royal. This is the final episode of this mini tournament arc in the Road to Battle Bladers arc, what we've all been waiting for. A couple of things to say before getting into this really. Kenta and Benkei saw Yu being so happy and questioned how a guy like him could be part of the Dark Nebula, so that's going to be a bit of a storyline. Also, throughout this battle, they're going to show this masked guy, the Phoenix, which they didn't say his name in this episode, but like, yeah, he basically got a bit of an introduction, like an appearance in this episode. But yeah, before even talking about the battle, I'm just going to go ahead and give this episode an A grade. I haven't been giving out like pluses and minuses just to like not overcomplicate things, but this episode probably deserves a plus tacked onto its A grade. I believe it was supposed to start out as like separate battles, which I don't know how the final round would work with like 3 of them since there were 6 competing in this stage in total, and those bladers were you, Tsubasa, Kenta, Hyoma, Kyoya, and Gingka. But Doji put in the call to make this a battle royal, a 6-way battle, which I guess was implemented to help you and Tsubasa out. But at this point, like, I know Hyoma and Kyoya weren't there for the reveal, but their friend group knows, so wouldn't that just make it easier for everyone to team up on the Dark Nebula bladers? Anyways, ignoring some of the stuff that doesn't make much sense, I can't even complain because this ended up being so peak. Everyone was talking about all of these dream matchups that could happen. You got your Flame Will Stamina type showdown that happened for a bit between Sagittario and Libra. You got your defense type showdown between Aries and Eagle, even though in real life Eagle is a balance type, and like that's something that I noticed about the show. Some of the types are inconsistent, but like I really just don't care that much. You get all of that, then you get this nice little storyline of Kyoya kind of helping Kenta somewhat throughout this battle since he wasn't really in it, really thinking about the you stuff, and it was nice seeing them like kind of team up and like try and like take him down. I kind of like how this feels sort of like the survival battle in a way, like not that it's the same thing, but like the team up aspect. You can decide if you're gonna battle alone or team up. Then you have the Dark Nebula members turning on each other because Tsubasa was trying to battle Gingka when they agreed to save Gingka for last. Then when you activated Inferno Blast, like you just have this chaotic scene of Eagle using the counter stance that he showed off a few episodes back to get inside Libra's Inferno Blast at the Dark Nebula. Now that's out there for everyone to see, so like everyone can see that this Inferno Blast special move can somewhat be countered in a way. And Leon used the tornado to protect himself and Sagittario, just continuing that sort of like Kyoya and Kenta camaraderie. Then this stuff seemingly pushed Gingka to the brink of coming up with a new special move. It doesn't have a name now, and in terms of winning, it was unsuccessful, but the same vacuum attack that he used to beat Pisces was used to destroy Libra's almost unstoppable Inferno Blast. Like, we have seen it kind of get broken through by Tsubasa twice, but the first time ended in a tie, and like this time we're seeing it live. It's like whenever he used his Inferno Blast against Gingka the first time and Hyoma, it's just so unstoppable. So being able to just cut through it and erase it was very huge at this point in the show. But it ended in all 3 of Eagle, Libra, and Pegasus losing and Leon and Sagittario surviving. Aww, that was so nice of Kyoya. But it was so funny when like he said too slow and finished Kenta off before he could use Flame Claw. And with that, the episode ended and Kyoya became the first blader to qualify for Battle Bladers. Whoever would have thought that Kyoya or anyone other than Gingka would be the first to qualify for Battle Bladers. Unexpected, but like I just love how unpredictable this story is. Like, it's been a while since I've watched a show quite like Beyblade. I must say, with this big battle royal, they really outdid themselves for sure. Like I said, tacking on pluses and minuses like overcomplicates things, but I just have to make a special exception and give this episode an A+. Like, it's just so peak. Make another one just like it. Epic battle between what I would say are all of the top bladers in the show right now, minus Doji and Ryuga. Perfect ending to a good match, much needed tournament arc. Like I said, family reunion vibes, get to see everyone. So yeah, they just knocked it out of the park on this one. Episode 33, The Oath of the Phoenix. Boy, if you don't get your Order of the Phoenix rip-off looking self out of here, man, you're not Harry Potter, mate. Nah, just messing around, but I actually think that The Oath of the Phoenix would be a great title for this little arc in the Road to Battle Bladers arc. I thought about leaving it unnamed, but actually, this arc is really important. Alright, so the episode started with Kyoya getting his points, announcing that he qualified for Battle Bladers. They agreed to meet each other at Battle Bladers and went on their separate ways, leaving this big tournament arc in the past, unfortunately. Anyways, after this, Gingka and Madoka started talking about this new little like vacuum move that Gingka was using and how Pegasus needs to be in control more to like make a special move out of it. This made Gingka think that he needed more launch power, so Madoka gave him a digital power launcher, which kind of like the customization episode right here, like they're definitely trying to sell you something. I remember when I was in 4th grade, this was like Master's time, I believe, I had to move back to the area where I was originally from, which upset me. So my mother asked me what would it take for me to want to move back. So I can't remember exactly what all I asked for, but I definitely remember I wanted Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story for the DS since I lost my copy in 2nd grade and got stuck on the Bowser boss fight. So I just had to beat that game. I'm so competitive. Then Beyblade wise, we got these remote controlled Beyblades and the digital power launcher that they're talking about in this episode, and that's all it took for us to want to move back. The only thing of value that I got was the Mario video game. The Beyblade stuff was just so underwhelming, especially the remote control Beyblades. But yeah, since they talked about the digital power launcher, just have to say my experience with it. Not that it's bad, but maybe I should have got something else. It just wasn't all that game changing for me. Just like other toys at this time, especially toys to life like Skylanders, Disney Infinity, Amiibo, I must say Beyblade absolutely knew how to make you open up your wallet, so good job on them. Anyways, while testing out the digital power launcher, Tetsuya showed up because he thought that stopping Gingka from entering Battle Bladers would get him points with the Dark Nebula, because remember, he lost to Gingka after getting a remodeled Beyblade from the Dark Nebula, so he really needs to make a big splash here. So his plan was to dress up all nice in a disguise, lure Gingka into a false sense of security, and steal his pointer, which happened. The funniest thing was when Krabby was trying to get away. He said, look in the other direction, and for the first time in forever, he wasn't lying. There were actually some rainbow colored crabs. Anyways, they chased him to a construction site where Phoenix stole the pointer from Mr. Krabs and didn't want to give it back to Gingka because he didn't take care of it in the first place. Gingka agreed to battle against his burned fire blaze for the points back, in which the whole battle, at least the speaking part, was kind of a lecture and critiquing how Gingka goes about Beyblade, always smiling in defeat, and his will needs to get stronger. When Jinga's new vacuum attack wasn't enough to beat Fire Blaze, he lost and got his pointer destroyed and promised to never lose again, and Phoenix just flew away. I'm gonna give this episode an A. I was skeptical and didn't know how they could follow up such an amazing tournament arc with something better or of equal quality, especially since that was the family reunion, you know? That was all of our heroes and some villains that we grew to like all in the same place, you know? How can they follow up the battle royal? Well, they succeeded in that. I wasn't really feeling the first part. I thought this episode was going to be kind of normal. I actually thought that it was going to be kind of like the customization episode, but Phoenix really turned this into an A-tier episode. I love the construction site, atmosphere, or location. It made for an exciting battle, especially with how this interesting Burn Fire Blaze Beyblade was using the environment, melting the metal, and kind of parkouring or bouncing off the walls and such. Also, some of the music that played while this battle was going on, I believe it's called Burning Rebirth. That's one of my absolute favorites for sure. I already knew the result of this battle, but it was fun seeing all of that and Jinga thinking his special move worked just for him to get crushed, showing that he's no longer on top anymore. There's Ryuga, he never technically beat you, and Kyoya already qualified for Battle Blader, so this moment kind of grounds him and shows him that while he's still a strong blader, he needs to get to another level, especially if he wants to beat Ryuga, and maybe that's what Phoenix was there for all along, maybe that was his mission. Also, this episode really was an emotional one, it made me feel sad with the breaking of the pointer and the music choice, and just thinking about all of the battles, all of those good times are just gone now, and Gingka has to start over. This episode was great. They're just releasing hit just after hit like that Flight React song. But yeah, this is definitely an A tier episode. Episode 34, Shine, Virgo. In this episode, the beginning part focuses on Gingka going through these tournaments quickly, racking up points and realizing that he still needs to master his new special move because he almost got a stadium out trying to use it, he almost lost to a random. Then he sees Hikaru getting beat by a new blader that he ends up meeting later on in the night, and apparently this Teru Saotome guy wants payback and to battle at the tournament the next day. So predictably, they got to the finals where Gingka got to face his Earth Virgo Beyblade, and Teru told him his story about being a ballet star, but because of an ankle injury that hospitalized him. But when he saw Gingka, he got inspired to take on blading, so that's what the payback was for, to pay Gingka back for inspiring him. Then in the battle, Gingka was getting beat because Earth Virgo had rock solid defenses and couldn't be hit from the side or above because of its fast movement, putting Pegasus in a situation where he absolutely needed this vacuum attack to lift up Virgo and hit it from below. He eventually defeated Virgo with his brand new Stormbringer special move, and that's the battle and the episode. I'm gonna give this episode a C. I like that Gingka got a new special move and like he's on a rigorous journey to get all of his points back. That's good. I just find Teru boring, everything about him. I'm not really like all that invested in his story or his battling style. He's boring, his Beyblade is boring, and even with Gingka creating a new special move for Pegasus, this episode is still boring. But without that, then this episode would have been like boring filler. It would have got like an F or something like that. It's an alright episode, but definitely not one that I'm like rushing back to rewatch. Definitely not one of the best, especially after coming off the peak, the absolute peak of this season with the Battle Royal and the Fireblaze episode and such. So this episode is going to get a C grade. Episode 35, El Drago on the Move. Not gonna lie, this is basically a Ryuga is him episode. He went to this 100 Beyblade battle that Benkei was in, which is a nice sort of like callback. Like he said that he was in one of those before. He was so confident that he would beat Ryuga, but like he just one-shot everyone. So yeah, Benkei is basically a joke. Like he's being put on the back burner for sure. He's not a joke because like he couldn't beat the best blader ever, but it's like because he's not really getting much, like I said, the Tetsuya battle would have been a nice time to have him actually win an important battle, but like he keeps on losing. This is happening while someone like Kenta is winning important battles and like getting development and like taking past advice to become a stronger blader. Very expected, but Benkei just isn't that important anymore. Anyways, Ryuga just started like racking up points in bunches, even like easily taking down Ryutaro and Tobio in the same battle, which is nice to see them again, especially Tobio. But you can tell just how powerful Ryuga is when compared to Gingka. Like this distortion drive that took a bit of time for Gingka to figure out was just so easy for Ryuga because El Drago's left rotation disrupted the airflow and Tobio just isn't that good. So like that was an easy dub. But you know, while these battles were taking place, Tsubasa was suspicious, questioning El Drago, and his real intentions got exposed here. Firstly, before getting to that, it was funny when Doji had Tetsuya locked up for questioning. He thought that stealing Jinga's pointer would gain him favor with the Dark Nebula, when actually it did the exact opposite, because if I'm getting this right, with Gingka getting stronger and learning a new special move and such, Doji wants Gingka at Battle Bladers so Ryuga can take all of that power. That then brings up the question, if he could change the tournament in like the Battle Royal just like that, then what's stopping him from giving Gingka the points? Although by having him grind for another like 47k, 50k points, Pegasus is going to get even stronger, which is good for El Drago because it's going to take all of that power. Anyways, we finally get to know what the mysterious Tsubasa is actually up to. He lured the Dark Nebula into a false sense of security so he could at one point infiltrate when Merci, the computer system, was down for maintenance, and tap into the control room and see what exactly makes El Drago the Forbidden Bay, which he eventually got his answers. He watched Jinga's battle with Ryuga and heard that whenever it's attacked, it gains power. When he was about to leave, he was caught by Yu and Doji, and like it was all a setup, and they sent basically all of the Dark Nebula members, like some training guys, the Gemios twins, the Orso brothers, and like they even let Mr. Krabs free to take on Tsubasa. But just like this could be called the Ryuga is him episode, it can also be called a Tsubasa is him episode because he beat everyone kind of with ease until Ryuga showed up at the end of this episode, and the episode ended there. This is an easy A tier episode. It's a Dark Nebula focused episode. They felt like the main characters, which is interesting. I'm not gonna like name shows because I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I always liked episodes where like they kind of show you a different perspective. Like they show you the episode but through the villain's eyes. So like I absolutely enjoyed that Fusion had an episode like that, just adding to its arsenal. Like it has episodes that focus on Jinga's friends and bad guys. Like it's becoming such a well-rounded show where we really get to know about everyone for real. Also, It's nice seeing Ryuga battle for like the first time in a while. Sure, the battles are a bit like uninteresting because he's so overpowered and like they're over with quickly, but the visuals are always nice, I have to say. And the main reason why I liked it is because of the Dark Nebula infiltration. I've talked about Splinter Cell and Metal Gear a few times here, so like I've got to say the infiltration gave off those vibes, which I'm all for. And it was nice to finally learn what the mysterious Tsubasa's intentions actually were. Like it's all coming to a head. And of course, the battle at the end, Tsubasa versus everyone, was entertaining because one, he finally showed off some of his true strength that he was holding back on, and although he was dominating everyone, it was fun, especially when he outplayed the Orso brothers, the Komade brothers, and got the Gemios twins to attack Mr. Krabs. This is definitely an A-tier episode, and it's a nice rebound episode after coming off a kind of mid episode that was the Teru episode. Outside of the Teru episode, this show has been really peak lately, starting in the middle of the Glintsville City tournament mini arc, so hopefully it stays that way. Episode 36, Broken Wings. This episode picks up right where they left off, with Ryuga showing up to the party. Yu and Doji wanted to take Tsubasa on and not have Ryuga get involved with such nonsense, but Ryuga wanted Tsubasa all to himself, so they battled. It's here where we learned that apparently regular attacks have no impact on El Drago really. That's why Eagle started off with a special move, Metal Wing Smash, because Tsubasa got the data and like he knows all of this. However, this wasn't all that useful to Tsubasa because like he's just not strong enough at this point in the story, and he may never be. Like that's a real possibility. It's like Ryuga's El Drago wasn't affected by anything, and all throughout the battle it was absorbing Eagle's power, which came as a shock to Tsubasa, but I thought that he already learned that when he was looking around in the Dark Nebula headquarters. Anyways, when he was about to get utterly destroyed by El Drago, Mr. Phoenix came in to save him and they flew away. That brings up the question, like, where was bro all of this time? We still don't really know of his intentions at this point, like good, bad, anti-hero, whatever, but why couldn't he have saved Gingka when he and Ryuga battled in the Forbidden Bay arc? I guess then like you just don't have a story at that point, or like you have to change it. But that really got me thinking, like, where was this Phoenix guy all of this time? Anyways, after this, because of a possible new enemy, that got Doji to believe that the Dark Nebula needed to strengthen their forces, which you said that he's already on it. In the previous episode, when Ryuga just dominated Tobio and Rutaro, he said that he wanted them to join him, so I guess that they were just like stashed at the Dark Nebula headquarters. You sent Tobio out there to a tournament that Gingka was competing in to show that he could be valuable. On one hand, good thing that Tobio interrupted this Django guy that Gingka was going to face in the finals, but on the other hand, like, what is it with people in this world? They're always like so impatiently interrupting challenge matches. Like, where's their manners at? Anyways, we get a Storm versus Storm showdown, which in theory sounds nice, but we saw that Tobio got absolutely dominated by Kyoya and Ryuga, bladers that Gingka has either beat in Kyoya's case or just put up a better fight against in Ryuga's case. Although I will say that Gingka faced Ryuga very early on, like when it was at its weakest, so Tobio had a tougher battle possibly. But yeah, all of that context and like the similar matchups would get me to believe that this battle would be a breeze, like an easy Gingka win. But the thing about this stadium is that it was absolutely perfect for a sniper like Tobio. It had these moving walls, and while Tobio could find the perfect windows to snipe Gingka's Pegasus, Gingka on the other hand couldn't figure it out for a while. That was so cool. Maybe Tobio isn't the best blader, but he got a perfect stadium to make him look like an expert, which makes me want them to try this with bladers like Ota and Benkei. Like, let's see them in the catbird seat for once. Like, let's see them on top dictating the battle and like forcing their opponents like Gingka or like a Kyoya or Tsubasa to play by their rules. Anyways, then like they went to this like mind dream world desert town where Tobio was trying to snipe Gingka and like stay hidden, and then in the real world they eventually had a conversation about walls. Tobio said that some walls can't be broken like Ryuga, while Gingka believes that no wall can't be overcome, which got him to use his Stormbringer special move to break the walls and knock Capricorn out. Yu was upset, but Doji was glad that Pegasus was gaining more power for Ryuga to eventually take in the end. I'm definitely going to give this episode an A grade, mainly because of the Tobio versus Gingka fight. I was absolutely not expecting it to be that good, and in the end, Tobio basically got one shot, but the journey was interesting. Like I said, I really liked seeing Tobio have the upper hand, especially using that snipe shot strategy. That looked so cool. Also, I usually don't like when they're leaving the world and going somewhere else, with the Pisces distortion drive stuff, but this right here works, with the western town and Tobio sniping Gingka. It feels like a game. It's a little bit more tense of a scenario, and it's better visually because with the Pisces stuff, they're just standing in space or whatever. But with this town, there's a bit more movement, more action, I would say. The Ryuga and Tsubasa battle looked good visually and definitely had an unexpected conclusion, which is definitely a part of what makes this episode good, but this Gingka and Tobio battle really earns it an A. Episode 37, Rock Scorpio's Deadly Poison. In this episode, Kenta's walking in this lonely town looking for a stadium until this brother and sister tandem, Kazuki and Yui, wanted to battle him. They wanted all of his Bay points, which was weird, but they didn't offer all of their Bay points when Kenta eventually beat them. When they lost, they cried about their stadium being lost forever, so Kenta was interested and they filled him in on what happened. Basically what happened was that this gang, kind of similar to the Face Hunters, but yeah, they're headed by Busujima and they just took over the stadium, crushing a Beyblade and their battle bladers' dreams. So Kazuki, Yui and friends had to make this makeshift stadium. I wonder who's actually a better group, the Face Hunters or these guys. There were some Point Hunters a while back, but they didn't really make that much noise and they weren't really a real gang to begin with, and they got dealt with swiftly. Just a nice question that I think about. Anyways, when they went back to the stadium, they saw Sora taking on Busujima's Rock Scorpio, in which he lost because this guy threw a drink at his Beyblade. He wanted a rematch, but if he lost, he would have to give up his Cyber, so Kenta intervened and just got him out of there. Then we learned that Sora wanted to stop them because Gingka would have never allowed something like that to happen, which is nice to see that his storyline is still carrying over and he's still a fan of Gingka. He wanted to rush into another battle, but everyone stopped him because Busujima could use his anger and the fact that he's unprepared to his advantage. They calmed everyone down and they all went on this little training arc, training montage, which I quite liked. However, the gang found amusement out of it. They sent this spy guy to spy on them and report back and such. So what happened was the gang cornered Kazuki and Yui and broke Kazuki's Beyblade when he lost and took Yui away, and if they went back to the stadium, they're gonna get their Beyblades broken just like Kazuki, and if they wanted Yui back, Kenta would have to give up all of his points because Busujima identified him as a strong bleeder. So while they were on their way back to the stadium, the gang cornered them, but Kenta told Sora to go on and take Busujima on, which I love. I already talked about how Kenta is getting some development, so this is the perfect time for Sora to show off his skills since we haven't really seen him in a while, and why bring Sora back if he wasn't going to compete in the main important battle? So I love that call. Both Sora and Kenta struggled because of underhanded tactics, like Busujima getting oil on the stadium and causing a fire. Then these gang members sent more bladers to outnumber Kenta, but Sora managed to stay calm when Busujima was taunting him about wearing diapers, which was important. That's what the training was for, because Sora gets too heated and distracted. Then out of nowhere, Gingka, just sitting on this ledge, cleared out all of the Beyblades for Kenta so everyone could get to the main battle. Bro lost his points. He doesn't have time for this ore farming. He's got to qualify for battle bladers now. Then, while Sora was talking about blader spirit and such, out of nowhere, again, Gingka appeared and backed him and used his Stormbringer special move to clear up the stadium, which, by the way, wow, that's really becoming his go-to special move for now, over Star Blast attack that he just spammed at the beginning of the show. But yeah, this left an opening for Sora to use his special move, OV Drive. Win the battle, meet Gingka, return the stadium to normal, and get on with their lives. This is absolutely an A-tier episode for sure. I was skeptical coming in because I kind of saw this episode as like a one-off episode. Not that Sora is like a one-off character, like we're seeing him right now, but it's like I kind of know or like have an idea that this is the peak of Sora and Busajima's like storyline in screen time, or like it's close to it. And as the series goes along and they meet new bladers, like a lot of these Metal Fusion characters are going to become afterthoughts. So I was kind of skeptical, like how am I going to get invested in characters that like I'm probably not really going to see again in an important way, like in a relevant capacity. But man, I've got to say those questions were answered. This episode made me feel emotion. Like I was actually trying to hold back tears because this episode was so powerful. They made me invested in the story by making it relatable. Bullying, I would say that most of the time I was on the wrong end of it, so it really made me tear up seeing these kids get bullied and like get their Beyblades broken, which in this universe your Beyblade is kind of like your best friend or like your sibling that like you live all of your life with, experience everything with, so it's like tough to see them get broken. But the training scene was inspirational. I like that little engine that could vibe, seeing all of these kids with stock Beyblades training to stand up to the mighty Busajima and like get their stadium back. Like that was nice. Then I absolutely love the payoff at the end. We got to see Sora idolize Gingka to the point where like he tried to use his special move, but eventually Kenta helped him to grow as a blader to where he can still idolize Gingka but be unique in his approach and like stay true to Cyber's battling style. So it was nice to see that payoff where he is a solid blader because of Gingka's influence, and like he finally gets to meet him and like they beat a bad guy together, in which Gingka let him finish him off with his special move. It's such a happy ending, like a good payoff to Sora's story that happened a few episodes back. I was on the brink of tears for this whole episode. Like all of this is some powerful stuff. Like I said, I went in not expecting much, but this actually ended up being one of the best episodes so far. I know I said I'm not ranking, like rather I'm rating the episodes because it would be like a lot of splitting hairs for like a lot of episodes. But the two episodes that I feel the most confident about are the Battle Royal episode that got an A+, and this episode right here. Like those would be top two if I made rankings right now. It's such an amazing episode and like they're on an amazing run right now. Hopefully that continues. Episode 38, Run, Gingka. Alright, so this episode is basically a glazing Gingka episode. It shows everyone else qualifying for Battle Bladers, which is like the main group outside of Kyoya because like he already qualified, and it showed that Ota didn't qualify. Like I said, where's Baby Bladers? Where's that concurrent Baby Blader season to run alongside this one and tell the tales of Ota and some beginner bladers? Anyways, when Gingka got to the Metal Bay City, they were shocked to see that he didn't qualify, and like they learned about the Phoenix story, and because with all of the tournaments closing, he basically got locked out of Battle Bladers because he only had 47k unless he could battle with others. Like that idea was proposed because they all had extra points, but Gingka, being such a noble guy and like having blader spirit and all, like he didn't want to take those points. If that were me, I'm taking those points right away, but like then there's no show, like there's no intrigue, so that's smart. However, here comes the plot armor. Just so conveniently, a tournament reopened, giving out 3k points, the exact amount of points that Gingka needed at the absolute perfect time, with Battle Bladers only being 2 episodes away. So they tried to go there, but along the way, Tsubasa stopped them and revealed that he's not part of the Dark Nebula anymore, but still wanted to battle them, to which his friends took him on. Then we get a flashback of just what happened after Phoenix saved Tsubasa from getting destroyed by El Drago. He completely clocked that he's a WBBA investigator tasked to learn about Doji's plans. He wants to beat El Drago in the end, but Phoenix said that he can't beat El Drago, only Gingka can beat El Drago, because Tsubasa can only get so strong on his own while Gingka has the power of friendship. So he wanted him to get to know his friends, so like that's why he's there. I'm really following Phoenix. Like I understand what he's saying. Like yeah, all of these bladers like Tsubasa and Kyoya might be strong, but in Beyblade, friendship matters a lot, and Gingka's friends will ride for him. So I think Phoenix was trying to get him to see that. And all throughout these battles that took place with Hikaru, Benkei, Hyoma, and Kenta, they were all trying their hardest to protect Gingka, and like were all upset when they let Gingka down. And Sagittarial's special move hit even harder when everyone started talking about all that Gingka meant to them and such, and like it still went over Tsubasa's head even when Kenta put his points on the line so Gingka could make it. Good thing for him, Gingka interrupted that battle and didn't actually go to the tournament because he couldn't let his friends down. And just reinforcing what I'm thinking, Phoenix came in and got mad at Tsubasa because all of this stuff was right in his face throughout all of the battles, but he still didn't understand. But he told Tsubasa to battle so he could understand, and back at the Dark Nebula, Doji traced the Phoenix back to Mount Hagane, Koma Village, so I wonder who Phoenix is. Considering that we know it's not Gingka or Hyoma, it's not Hoikuto, possibly so, the only other person of importance that we met in the Koma Village arc is, well, you know, I've already seen this series, so I'm not like saying that it's so obvious on a first watch because like, as in like 8-year-old, I didn't actually know. So it's kind of cool to rewatch this again and like pay more attention and take a bunch of notes for each episode and see this moment and go like, oh, so that's where you get a clue that this Phoenix guy might be someone that you already met before, like you already saw. But yeah, I'm gonna give this episode a B grade. I wouldn't say that any of the battles were entertaining, which is why like this episode isn't getting an A, but like kind of like the previous episode, it made me feel something. That friendship stuff was like so on the nose, but I loved it. They made me care so much about all of these characters and the friendships that they built with Gingka, so it was kind of heartwarming seeing them like try to defend Gingka after all that Gingka has done for them in terms of inspiring them to become better bladers. I really like how that's flipped and like now they're the ones stepping up, taking a more important role, even though it ended in defeat for all of them. Kind of like the family reunion special that I keep on talking about, the Battle Royal. It's just so nice seeing them all come together, this time like actually fighting together, whether they started out as a rival, a bully, standoffish, or just friends from the beginning. Like the relationships that Gingka built are all there. Like he built them to a point where he had people fighting for him. Like that's amazing. Like that's really what's carrying this episode to a B grade. Episode 39, Clash, the Phoenix versus the Pegasus. This episode is the final episode of the Oath of the Phoenix arc and the Road to Battle Bladers arc overall. Will Gingka be watching Battle Bladers from the bleachers, or will he find a way to get in there? Let's find out. It picks up right where we left off, with Phoenix still being mad at Tsubasa for not understanding this friendship stuff that he's putting down, and he just like destroyed Tsubasa in a battle. Next, Phoenix challenged Gingka to a battle, and Gingka accepted to keep the Battle Bladers door open, and that's what this whole episode is really about. It's a boss fight to end the arc. They picked the Beyblade Coliseum, where this Road to Battle Blader stuff sort of started. Not technically, like that was at the survival battle's conclusion, but before everyone set off on their own journeys, they had this like one last battle here, so it's fitting that this arc is going to be wrapping up here. Anyways, I've got to say, this battle was so peak. It's like Phoenix had counters for everything, even Gingka's new special move, Stormbringer, that he tried to use at first. Then you had Tsubasa looking on trying to figure out what Phoenix was talking about. Then you had Kyoya just appearing out of nowhere and cheering Gingka on, like sort of. So the gang's all here. And something that was so cool was Gingka using all of his friends' techniques, like sort of a gale force wall like a Leon, or like dodging like Ares, or even flying like Eagle, which really got Tsubasa to catch on to what was going on there as he was about to walk away, as he believed that he had seen the limit of Pegasus and he was the only one that could beat El Drago, until he started seeing Gingka and Pegasus take back control of the battle by using his friends' techniques, which is what Phoenix was trying to teach him all along. The battle ended with Gingka outsmarting Phoenix, using a Star Blast attack that Phoenix could counter, but then on the ground, with Stormbringer, he was able to counter Phoenix while he was in the air and take him out. The battle ended with Phoenix giving Gingka all of his points back, so like, you know what that means. We go into Battle Bladers, baby. He's actually overqualified, like he went from not even being eligible to probably having the most points there, which just shows how hard he worked. Before he left, Phoenix told Gingka that he showed him his strength, which got Gingka to kind of like see his father in him, like remember him sort of, but Phoenix got away before he could be questioned. Then Tsubasa told everyone his deal, that he's working undercover for the WBBA and that he's on their side and wants to fight alongside them, so like they let him into the friend group. Meanwhile, on the Dark Nebula side, we see Doji and Yu searching around Koma Village for evidence. This episode ends with everyone that qualified for Battle Bladers being announced, which is such a surreal moment, as like that's what everyone was working up to, and it's like finally here. I've got to say, there's just absolutely no choice. This episode has to get an A, and like not just an A, it's getting an A+. I'm trying to limit A+s to like keep the value of an A+, but this episode totally deserves it. Like, it wasn't even a real decision. Like, halfway through this episode, I knew that I was watching absolute peak. It's actually amazing that I feel this way about this episode right now. Like I said, I watched this show before and some episodes were more memorable than others, so even though I was always open, I kind of had an idea of like what I was expecting for some of these episodes. But this is an episode that I didn't really like know all of what happened in it, just that Gingka was going to qualify for Battle Blader. So like, while other episodes probably had like more of a nostalgic backing, this episode only had like 20 minutes to really sell me on it, and it accomplished that for sure. Like I keep on saying with these get-together episodes, like family reunion vibes, gangs all here type vibes, that's very much appreciated, especially with the final boss vibes that this episode was giving off. Phoenix is the final boss of this arc and the Road to Battle Bladers arc overall, and Gingka had to use everything that he learned along the way to defeat him. Didn't matter where they came from, what terms they started off on, or whatever. He's taking from his childhood friend Hyoma. He's taking from Kyoya, someone that was a big antagonist for him in the early days, but like they became friendly rivals. He's taking from Tsubasa, someone that he's unsure of at the moment, but like he still had some good memories with him. He took everything that he learned throughout this series up to this point and channeled it all into this one battle, which was such an amazing payoff, like such a satisfying conclusion to the pre-Battle Blader story. And with this, you know that Gingka is ready, like he's locked in for sure. Also, I love Tsubasa joining the squad, like the more friends the better, as they combine their strength to hopefully beat El Drago one day. But yeah, about that battle, I just wasn't expecting it to be that amazing. It's totally up there with the Battle Royal, maybe even better. Like, that was just such a flawless battle. Everything was amazing with this episode, which is why it gets an A+. Episode 40, Go! Battle Bladers. Finally, we're at the Battle Bladers arc, 56 pages into my script. I had all of that to say about the pre-Battle Bladers portion. Now that Battle Bladers is in action, the show is only going to get even more chaotic, like the best is yet to come. Alright, so there was an opening ceremony and they showed the first round matchups, which were all Dark Nebula Bladers versus heroes, or like just non-Dark Nebula Bladers, which was something that Doji set up. Yu versus Gingka, Benkei versus Tobio, Kenta versus Tetsuya, Tsubasa versus Dan and Reiki, Teru versus Ryutaro, Kyoya versus Kumosuke, Hikaru versus Ryuga, and Hyoma versus a mysterious guy that we've never seen before, but apparently he's in the Dark Nebula since he was on that side. Our heroes realized this and saw this as like somewhat of a plan to take them down all at once, so they quickly breezed through some battles, but like none of them are the main attraction, you know? Not that they didn't like have some value. It was nice seeing Benkei finally get an important win and show off some good strategy against Tobio, attacking Capricorn when it was using its special move, because that's the only time that you knew for sure where it was going. Then Kenta versus Mr. Krabs was good for entertainment. He got knocked out while talking about how hard he trained. That's funny because like there's a bunch of times in this show where like mid-battle, these characters just go in these long, passionate speeches. So like, what if someone just told them to shut up, or like use that time while they're like trying to get all of that off to attack them or something? Like, that would be so funny. But yeah, despite being short, those battles had a bit of value, but Teru versus Ryutaro, not only was it short, but like I just don't care about them at all. Good win for Ryutaro, but man, get these randoms off of my screen, these filler characters, especially Teru. Like, of course, because Ryutaro is like kind of part of the Dark Nebula and like he's advancing further, he's a little more important to how this season plays out, but Teru was just a complete nothing burger. Like, he's a character, and like that's all I can really say about him. Like, he's not a good blader. These two are not as interesting or like as important as other bladers, so good thing that they kept this battle short and sweet to make room for the main event, Yu versus Gingka, which is where this episode gets most of its value from. It's such an interesting battle because Gingka's really beat every major character so far except for Ryuga and Yu. He's an antagonist for him. His loss to Yu is why this Battle Blader stuff even started in the first place, so it would be very interesting to see just how much Gingka and Yu have grown since that survival battle, and they definitely showcased that here. They were just going at it for the whole battle. Libra's new Sonic Shield blocked Pegasus' Star Blast attack, his shockwaves got rid of the tornado from Tornado Wing, then Yu was using Sonic Wave in a projectile capacity, which had never been seen before, and coupled with Sonic Buster, that made it such an OP combination because Yu was the only one that could see through the sand. But when Libra thought he delivered the final blow, Pegasus created a vacuum wall and then later on defeated Inferno Blast with Stormbringer, which already sort of happened before, but that was when it wasn't a special move. It was an unmastered special move, and he didn't have full control over that move, so the match ended in a tie for them. Kyoya won the battle, but yeah, Eagle, Libra, and Pegasus, they just got knocked out in a tie. Here, Gingka came so far since that battle and mastered his special move enough to beat Yu, and just like that, the big antagonist, this undefeatable Inferno Blast that looks so powerful, it got defeated, it got broken through, which is very big for the show. Although it wasn't his idea, more of Doji's idea, just imagine proposing a tournament like this, just to go out in the first round, and now you have to watch from the bleachers as everyone else takes your spotlight that you were supposed to have, that you earned. Anyways, after the battle, Gingka congratulated Yu, which finally got Yu to see what Kenta saw in Gingka, just being an overall nice guy, which is something that he was a bit frustrated with in this episode. He wondered why Kenta liked Gingka so much when Ryuga was better, but it was in this moment where he was able to figure out why. After this, Doji revealed that Yu was never really part of the plans and talks about how nasty the Dark Nebula can be, with the mysterious guy finally getting revealed, but no name yet. This episode is going to get an A grade, definitely. I talked about the other battles with Benkei and Kenta having some good value, but this A grade was really off the strength of the highly anticipated Gingka versus Yu rematch. I love how strong they are at this moment, both of them, not just Gingka. I liked it because while Gingka got stronger, it's they didn't leave Yu behind, and he got to learn new tactics to make the battle more interesting and even tougher for Gingka. He really had to work for this one, and it just feels like a completely different battle than the first time with the new tactics, and that just made it more satisfying when Gingka beat Yu and got his revenge, which I believe I already said, but I'm not the biggest fan of Yu, I'm not crazy about him, so seeing him get humbled here was great. He and that special move just felt way too unstoppable, way too OP, so I love that Gingka found a way to stop it, and yeah, this was a really competitive, evenly matched battle. It's definitely one of the best battles in the season, especially with that revenge aspect, and I like evolving Yu's strategy so we're not just watching the same battle, the same tactics, so it definitely deserves an A grade. It's a strong start to Battle Bladers. Episode 41, The Serpent's Terror. Well, you're not gonna like this one if you're rooting for the good guys. First, they're gonna show some unimportant easy battles like Kyoya beating Kumosuke and Tsubasa beating Reiki. Just Reiki, as Dan watched on from behind, which brings up a question that I already asked. Why is it mattering now at Battle Bladers when I assumed that they were both using Jimios before this, especially since Doji is running the tournament, and based on something that's coming up and previous events, he can bend the rules of these tournaments, so why wouldn't he allow the Jimios twins to battle together? Or was it just their own call, they made that decision on their own because the last time they battled together on screen, it didn't go well. Anyways, getting off of that, this is basically a torture episode, I would say. Imagine Grand Theft Auto 5 type stuff. This is a You Should Fear the Dark Nebula episode. You see, after everyone in the friend group won their battles in the first half, they just thought that they were going to steamroll. They thought it was all nice. That is, until it was time for Hyoma's battle and they met Reiji Mizuchi and his Poison Serpent Beyblade. There's no data out there on him, but he's part of the Dark Nebula, so there goes Doji manipulating the tournament. I wonder if he stole someone's spot, or there was just an uneven amount of bladers that qualified for Battle Bladers, so he would fit right in. Anyways, Hyoma and Solid Snake, Reiji battled, and Reiji's tactic was poison and torture. At first, Serpent appeared weak, but then as his attacks got stronger, it was revealed that every time Ares attacked Serpent, it was getting poisoned, injecting some poison into it. So although Serpent definitely was holding back power, like which he was able to show his full power at a point in this battle. But yeah, before that, it wasn't that Serpent got stronger, it's that Ares got weaker, and like it was kind of chipping away at Ares. As the battle goes on, Reggie starts his torture tactics, making Serpent attack Ares up into the air, never giving it a chance to land while he almost crashing out and crying. When Reggie was done playing around, he unleashed Serpent's dark move, which shocked everyone because only Ryuga has a dark move. I guess it's Venom Strike, which like I'm just now learning. Like for my whole life, I've been calling it Serpent Venom Strike, kind of like Cyber Star Blast Attack. Also, fun fact, that's just a dubbed, censored name for this move. I'm not sure if I can say that word, but search up Venom Strike on the Beyblade wiki sometime. But yeah, it broke Hyoma's Beyblade and like he cried so much that they had to put him in this room to calm down. Also, earlier in this video, I said that I was going to talk about a moment that was ruined by the dub. Well, this is what I was talking about. In the English dub, when Hyoma was crying, like it sounded so weird, so I definitely recommend the Japanese version for absolute sure, man. Like just for this one scene, as it captures the emotion and like the weight of the moment better. Stuff like that makes me wish that I could experience the show in its original form, like the original vision. But learning Japanese sounds scary, like trying to learn hiragana, katakana, and kanji, like that's a beast for sure. Anyways, after this, it didn't get much better for the Gingka gang as Hikaru matched up with Ryuga, and as much as I love Hikaru, like, come on now, they never gave us a reason to believe that she would beat Ryuga or even put up a fight. Like I know that she qualified, but she literally hasn't done anything impressive since beating Kenta all those times in like the literal first arc of the show. And that continues here. She just got dominated by Ryuga's dark move so badly that everyone ran away. It broke some of the stadium and it gave her PTSD basically. I am getting ahead in the series, but like she sort of quit Beyblade. Now, I have not rewatched Metal Masters at this point, and like I see that she fights in one battle, so I'll definitely have to check that out. Like that's going to be next. Rating every episode of Metal Masters, I'm hoping that's the next video that I make. But yeah, like that's really kind of it for Hikaru's journey as a blader. Ryuga ended her career, which is so unfortunate considering her backstory with her ill mother. I'm going to give this episode a B grade. Despite this episode being a victory for the villains, like I was sort of willing to give this episode an A. I love how atmospheric and immersive the Reggie battle is. Even though I wasn't rooting for him, I would have to say that the episode made me feel emotion. Like it made me feel weirded out by Reggie kind of like stalking them, and the music choice created this like really mysterious and somber vibe to the Hyoma versus Reggie battle. That was really good. That's immersive. Reggie is so iconic because whenever I hear someone talking about things like poison and toxins like venom and stuff, I always think about him. So like they succeeded in that regard. But man, I sort of know how this series plays out, and that's with Hikaru giving up Beyblade basically, or like switching roles, and like she's one of my favorite characters in the show. So like I can always thank this episode for sort of ending her journey. Not that it's terribly written, like it's good for Gingka, like more ammo for Gingka. But man, like it came at the expense of one of my favorites, so that makes me feel a certain type of way about this episode. Plus the battle wasn't even entertaining. But I will also say, not that I'm changing my grade, but it is interesting to see the long-term, like long-lasting effects of how the dark power made someone quit Beyblade, which makes it feel like a little bit more real, I would say. But yeah, anyways, a B grade is good for this episode. Like it's a solid episode. Episode 42, The Dragon's Punishment. This episode was a Dark Nebula focused episode. We learned that the tournament organizers are checking on Hikaru and that the original matchups for the final 8 bladers left are Kyoya versus Ryuga, Gingka versus Reiji, Tsubasa versus Ryutaro, and Benkei versus Kenta. Also later on, Tsubasa was kind of like sneaking off and like trying to beat Ryuga by himself because like he just couldn't watch anyone else fall victim to Ryuga after seeing him put Hikaru in a hospital or whatever, like she's out of commission. It led to him getting caught by Kyoya, and Kyoya went on about how that's an insult to him as a blader and he'll face anyone head on. So like since they're in this tournament, let it play out naturally, which got Tsubasa on the same page. That was a really like nice passionate speech that I liked. Like it was a good moment between Tsubasa and Kyoya, clashing ideals and ultimately showing off why Kyoya is such an amazing blader. Anyways, outside of that, it's just punishment. The dragon's punishment. You know, this whole tournament was just a setup for El Drago to get power, so it was going to get power one way or another, but the guys that lost became food for El Drago. They were forced to battle with him, and when they lost, like, he kind of broke their Beyblades and like took all of their power, their spirit, and you would happen to be on the loser side. Yeah, basically, Yu's gonna learn that he was never part of the real plans for the Dark Nebula. Like, they basically just used him to win the survival battle to like put this whole plan into action. Doji seemed to be a little concerned that Yu was happy after losing, and Yu talked about how Gingka was influential and made Beyblade fun. After watching all of the losers get their blader spirit or like their power taken by Ryuga, Doji matched Yu up with Serpent, with Reggie, to help Reggie warm up, which is more favorable than battling Ryuga, someone that he lost to, like very handily, all the way back in the survival battle arc. If Yu wins this battle, he can stay or leave the Dark Nebula. But by the way that Yu was sounding, he was gonna leave no matter what. They battled and Reiji used the same playbook, just chipping away slowly, like slowly poisoning and breaking Libra, then waiting for the perfect moment to really go on the offensive and use his dark move. All while the torture was happening, you remembered his interaction with Gingka and how he made Beyblading fun, in contrast to this situation where he was getting tortured and like crying because it wasn't fun. Even his biggest hero, the guy that he spent the whole season glazing, Ryuga, wouldn't even save him, turned his back on the kid. Then when he was about to get finished off, he remembered what Gingka taught him, which gave him the strength for one final attack, and the episode ends on a cliffhanger. I'm gonna give this episode an A, definitely. It's no secret that I'm not the biggest fan of Yu. Like, I don't really like how cocky he is and how everything comes to him so easily. So then and now, I liked watching him get humbled like that and like lose everything he had, like life comes at you fast type stuff. But also at the same time, they made it an emotional episode where like I was fighting inside my head. Like I already said, I'm not the biggest fan of Yu, and like I like that he's getting humbled for all that stuff in the past, but now like in the moment for this episode, how could you not feel for a helpless kid getting wrecked like this, and like not even his idol wanted to save him? Like this episode was heavy for sure. I already talked about the unique, like weird immersive atmosphere that gets created whenever Serpent battles, and like it was no different here. I already talked about why I like the Tsubasa and Kyoya moment, showing the fearlessness that I absolutely love from Kyoya. And yeah, like this was a good episode from the perspective of the Dark Nebula. It was all cheery when everyone qualified for Battle Bladers and Gingka finally got over the hump and beat Yu. Like this tournament started off so happy, but then like I like the shift to the more sinister side of Battle Bladers, showing off their real intentions and like just how nasty the Dark Nebula really is. They needed this episode, like they needed it all to themselves to show the nastiness and really get us to root against them even harder and inspire our heroes even more in the final few episodes of this show. So I'm gonna give this episode an A. It was a good episode. Episode 43, The Deck is Stacked. This episode picks up at the very end of the battle where we learn that Yu used its final move to basically escape, like it gave him a chance to get out of there. Next, we learn that Doji changed the matchups to Benkei versus Kyoya, Tsubasa versus Ryuga, Gingka versus Ryutaro, and Kenta versus Reggie. Gingka and Kyoya complained about this cheating, which like they have a right to, because like if you spent all of that time training from one opponent, then like you have to change your strategy all of a sudden to fit another opponent. Like that seems very unfair, but Doji flexed that like he's in charge, so like they just have to accept it. So this episode had two battles. The first one was Kyoya versus Benkei, and the second one was Gingka versus Ryutaro. I've been calling Benkei kind of garbage because like before Tobio, he hasn't really beat like a relevant blader since like the survival battle, and like I think it's clear that he's not like on the top level, like he's not on the level of the big boys. He's kind of like in that Hikaru, Tobio, like Tetsuya type of tier, but man, he put up an unexpectedly good fight against Kyoya. They say that Kyoya was getting pushed to his limits, which like I don't necessarily believe, but Benkei made Kyoya take him seriously, especially when Benkei's bull used a new special move, Maximum Stampede, and got some armor and like broke through the Fang Dance. But something that was even cooler was Leon using the Tearing Blast from above to beat Bull. I come away liking this battle a lot. Sure, there was like a lot of Kyoya glazing by Benkei, which was kind of weird, but like that's just Beyblade. Like, I've learned to like accept how over the top this show is. Like, it's kind of ridiculous sometimes. It's a very nice battle because Benkei's finally getting to fight his idol, and like it was nice of Kyoya to like kind of coach him up while battling, probably because like he knew that like he was always going to be winning, but like yeah, that brought out the best in Benkei to be able to use that new special move. Then came the next battle where Ryuga was pressured to beat Gingka to save his career basically. I've already talked about how I don't like Ryuga's battle style. It's more mental and like psychological than actually battling, or like it's not that action packed, and nothing changed here. But it was funny how he brought Gingka into this little like distortion world and set him on fire and froze him up. Most of this battle was kind of like a lecture, and like there was this little visual of El Drago ruling the world, which was the feeling that Ryuga got when he was seeing into the future. But after hearing Gingka's lecture about his blader spirit and how it'll never be put out, and when he eventually lost, Ryuga saw into the future again, but it wasn't El Drago ruling the world, it was Pegasus coming to face El Drago, which caused him to say that he trusts the future of Beyblade with Gingka and ripped up his gear like he's quitting his fortune-telling job, which was ominous, but that's because they didn't know that because he lost, that's basically it for him. They might get a hint as to what happened because they saw a worn down Yu walking in the building needing assistance, and the episode ended there. I'm gonna give this episode an A grade. I already said that I don't like Ryuga's battle style, but I will admit that Gingka's speech was inspirational. Like, I definitely like the visuals when showing like what the future will look like. But the main reason why this episode gets an A is off the strength of that unexpectedly good Kyoya versus Benkei battle. It's probably like not one of the best ever. Like, for that I would probably need more screen time for Benkei to have like at least one more counter move, but it was unexpectedly good, so like it surpassed my expectations, and at points it was an even and entertaining battle. So like this episode gets an A off the strength of that battle. Episode 44, Entrusted Emotions. After Yu ran away from the Dark Nebula to Gingka and friends, the main characters then start learning of the Dark Nebula's true intentions. Yu was never like really part of the plan. He was never seen as their second best blader, which seemed to be common consensus that he was top 2 behind Ryuga. None of the bladers in that organization were important. Like, they were all being used as food for El Drago so it could get stronger. When he explained the story and like they saw his damaged Libra, that made everyone mad, but especially Kenta, as he was battling Reiji next and said that he would never forgive the Dark Nebula. When Kenta was about to go out to the battle, Yu gave him Libra so Kenta could show Libra what a cool blader is like, and like they agreed to fight together. It could seem like a bit of a heel turn that like now the good guys are accepting Yu after being in the Dark Nebula for so long, but the setup was definitely there. Like, I definitely have to say that. Kenta always had somewhat of a soft spot for Yu, wondering why he's even in the Dark Nebula because he seems like a happy guy, and like he was nice to him in the survival battle when he got injured, and Yu seemed to be really nice to Kenta. Like, he seemed to be the closest to him, to the point where Yu was jealous that Kenta liked Gingka over Ryuga. So this has been building up for some time now, and like they're finally on the same side together to combat the Dark Nebula. But the question is it too late, especially with the broken Beyblade and like losing allies like Hikaru and Hyoma, and Ryuga is just getting stronger. Anyways, Kenta and Reiji got to battling, and early on we see that Kenta isn't necessarily taking the most damage, and like it's able to recover better and keep up with serpent snake-like movements because he put Libra's Eternal Sharp performance tip on Sagittario. But Reiji responded by breaking the claws off of Sagittario one by one, and it's like in mind sequences this snake started like wrapping around Kenta and turning him to stone until Yu showed up and started talking about blader spirit. This got Kenta to break out of that stuff, and Kenta and Yu pushed Reiji to the brink of elimination. However, that only forced Reiji to activate his true power, and Kenta eventually fell victim to his dark move and got a damaged Beyblade out of it. He wanted to completely break the Beyblade, but Gingka saved it, and they talked about what they believe a Beyblade battle is. So like that interested Doji, and he scheduled them for the next round of the tournament. Sad round for Kenta, but the episode ended with the crowd cheering for Kenta. This episode was mostly a battle, so the grade really comes down to how good I think the battle was, and I definitely say it was entertaining. This was like the first time that this guy Reiji, the only other person that had a dark move, was on the ropes or like wasn't getting his way so easily. And it's great that Kenta is the one that made him struggle the most up to this point. Like, are you telling me that this kid that was getting bullied in the very first episode is standing up to someone that has a dark move. That's amazing now. Well, now of course, he wasn't necessarily alone. He had Libra's performance tip and like he was sort of fighting with Yu using some of his power, but like that made it even better. I was talking about the Yu and Kenta connection, kids that used flame wheel stamina types, and obviously like they liked each other even when they were on opposing sides. So like it's nice to see that all coming together in this battle. Even without getting a happy ending of like Kenta beating Reiji, it was still an entertaining battle, which is why it gets an A grade. Episode 45, Aquila Strikes Back. This episode kind of continues this little like partnership or rivalry or mutual respect that Kyoya and Tsubasa have between each other, with Kyoya sort of like hyping Tsubasa up in his own way and understanding his strategy against El Drago. Also, there was a little subplot of Yu like still not being able to believe that Ryuga is really like that. Anyways, just like the previous episode, this episode is basically like just one big battle, so like my liking for this episode comes down to how good that I thought the battle was. Basically, Tsubasa was trying to use what he learned in his previous match against Ryuga. He showed off his full strength and his best tactic right away in that match. Now he wants to save his power for the right time and use it to block Ryuga's dark move, because he believed that he would only have a chance at beating El Drago if he could block the Dragon Emperor soaring bite strike. They're not going to set that up without letting us see the results, so that's exactly what happened. The first half of the battle was like kind of boring, with Eagle running away until Ryuga decided to use his dark move, which gave Tsubasa a chance to try out his strategy and use Earth Eagle's counter stance. That's the moment in this battle that everyone was waiting for, and I have to say, it was quite amazing. I love the intense power struggle and Eagle coming out on top in that. Like someone finally was able to block Ryuga's dark move, and like that's very huge for the show, showing that maybe Ryuga can be beaten potentially. I always like Tsubasa's like sort of like theme song or like music, I guess, but in terms of the battle that I would go to hear it, it would always be this battle, because like they play the full song and like it's just a nice battle to play it because it's inspirational. It's Eagle having this formidable El Drago sort of like on the ropes and delivering attack after attack. Like so far, no one has ever gotten to this point. No one has ever gotten like that deep into a battle with Ryuga, except like maybe Gingka in terms of the length of the battle, but that was when El Drago was weaker and like he didn't block a dark move. I absolutely loved this. However, it was short-lived, as although it looked like Tsubasa was pushing him to the brink, Ryuga wasn't using his true power and still had enough left to win the battle and absorb some of Tsubasa's power along the way, which was a sad scene for Gingka and friends, especially after seeing Hikaru basically get destroyed. I'm probably gonna give this episode a B. I like the Kyoya and Tsubasa mutual respect. Like that seemed like an interesting dynamic that it seemed like no one knew about. Like it was just them, which made it feel even better. Also, the power struggle was nice and like even better when Tsubasa won it and blocked the dark move. But the first part of this battle was boring because it was just Tsubasa basically like just running away, and like the second part was just utter domination, when I would have liked to see more of an evenly matched battle for the majority of the battle. It was only interesting at one point in the battle, which is why this episode is going to get a B. Like blocking the dark move is so monumental, but like there have been better fights and better episodes for sure, and like I have been giving out a lot of A's. Like everything can't get an A. Like this was a perfect B tier episode, one that's good, but outside of that one moment, like I'm not rushing back to watch this masterpiece of an episode or anything. Like that's not the case for this episode, which is why it gets a B. Episode 46, Libra Disappears. This episode is basically a two-parter. All of the battles that were started here got resolved later on, so like this is only the first half. There's two concurrent storylines. One of them is Jinga's battle versus Reiji, and the other one was the Yu, Kenta, and Hyoma storyline. Basically, from the Jinga storyline, it feels like every time Reiji battles, we learn that Serpent wasn't using its real power, and the same thing happened here, where now, apparently, like offer up, Serpent is using its absolute maximum strength, like its true power. For most of the battles, Serpent was like defensive leaning, but by flipping the spin track, now Serpent is more offensive leaning and using its true fangs. But I would say that the more interesting storyline for this episode was the Yu storyline. Basically, Doji went after Yu and like took him away because they made a deal and Yu ran away from the battle. This is where Doji's planning was kind of off, because like if the main goal was to make Ryuga powerful, then why waste Yu's battle on a warm-up for Reiji? Yu has more power than everyone that Ryuga was beating there, so like why not just take his power first and use like a Mr. Krabs or a like Captain Capri for Reginald to get a warm-up on. Anyways, that's why Doji was taking Yu back, and since Kenta and Hyoma saw this, they went after Doji by themselves because like they didn't want to interfere with Jinga's battle. Hyoma took the lead when it came to battling because his Aries made a full recovery, like Madoka fixed it up really well, while Sagittario was still badly damaged. Like I guess Madoka didn't have enough time, like she couldn't get around to it, so like he was using a stock Beyblade. He was still good when using that Beyblade as they were able to beat some Dark Nebula generics, but he got one shot by Doji and was about to fall victim to him until Hyoma saved him. But Hyoma was no match for Doji because like he already used up a lot of power, which forced Kenta to use his damaged Sagittario to save him. And interestingly enough, a piece of Sagittario's fusion wheel got lodged into Wolf's fusion wheel, so we'll see what that leads to. But yeah, they got beat easily, and when they were about to fall victim to Doji, Phoenix came in and the episode ended there. I'm gonna give this episode a B and like say that it kind of struggles from being like such a clear two-parter, where like to appreciate it fully, it kind of has to be rated together, which I'm open to going like over that scenario, but I'm trying to get myself in the mindset of like at the time it wasn't really streaming like that, or like this was more so like just a Saturday morning cartoon / anime type of deal. So like how would I feel if I waited a whole week just to see this episode, in which it's a solid episode, but the best is yet to come. There's a decent amount to juggle between an important Battle Bladers match and saving Yu, which I like. In theory, like they are interesting storylines, but the Battle Bladers storyline didn't get as much shine as it could have gotten because there was a bigger focus on the saving Yu storyline, and none of them really got a satisfying conclusion here because like they're both setup type storylines, like they're both setting up for an amazing finish. So that's why I would give this a B grade. It's interesting, but I have seen better, and the best is yet to come. Episode 47, Bonds of Steel. This episode is the conclusion to all of the battles that took place in the previous episode. I was actually surprised with the Gingka and Reiji battle because I remember Gingka struggling a bit more. Like he literally got his special move like sort of blocked and got turned into stone by Medusa, and he had Reggie all in his mind saying generic bad guy dialogue and such. But it was funny when, after going on this big speech trying to sound all hard, Gingka actually laughed at Reiji, and from that point on, like he kind of just treated Reiji like a joke. He was not afraid of Reiji, rather he was afraid of losing to him because that meant that he could not go further into the tournament and battle Ryuga. I actually really like the creative way that Gingka was able to just so easily stop his dark move. You see, Medusa was turned into stone when it saw a reflection of itself, so that's what Pegasus implemented by copying and mirroring Serpent's each and every move. Serpent was the one that took damage, and from there, Gingka had the upper hand. Pegasus Stormbringer for the win, and now bro's in the finals. Let's go. That brings up the question, why is Serpent so weak? I mean, like, Reiji had a good run, but that tactic, that strategy that Gingka implemented was so easy. Now, maybe coming up with it wasn't easy. Maybe it would only take a blader like Gingka of his stature to come up with that strategy, but now that the book is out on Reiji, can't anyone beat him, like Ulta or someone? Or is there like a certain amount of power that they still need to have like to be able to even compete with Serpent? But yeah, I found that interesting, and I don't know if it's underwhelming how easily Reiji went down, but it is eyebrow raising. Although it would make sense for him to go down easier as opposed to someone like Ryuga, because Reiji is just now coming along while Ryuga has been built up throughout the whole story. So like that needs to be a bit more action packed and like a bit more of a climactic conclusion, I would say. Months after watching the show, I still don't know how to feel about Reiji. He's a Battle Bladers exclusive villain that just shows up for a few episodes and causes havoc. Did he succeed in his role? Could he have used like a bit more setup, or did the fact that he was only there for Battle Bladers make it better? I really don't know how to feel about the guy, but yeah, like this was basically the end of his story. Then on the other side, it was Phoenix versus Doji, which was really interesting because one, Doji hinted at knowing of his identity, so this was looming over everyone's head. Also, Doji hasn't had a real deal like evenly matched battle in a while, so this is good for seeing just how strong he truly is, as I had questions about that since the Forbidden Bay arc. So it was a good battle visually, especially when Wolf took Phoenix down into that like darkness void type of thing. Like that was so crazy, so cool. They definitely had a bigger animation budget to work with in this episode. Like it seems like that can be seen across both battles. I always remember the Battle Bladers plotline and like kind of like how it went, but I totally forgot about this specific plotline. And honestly, this was a more action-packed battle than the Battle Bladers battle, with Wolf taking Phoenix in and out of the building and like going down into the darkness void. And the speeches were on point because they both had contrasting views about darkness and light. But remember when Sagittario got a part of its fusion wheel stuck in Wolf? That's all the light that Phoenix needed, and it attacked the weak point and severely damaged Dark Wolf and beat Doji. But because of all that battling, it weakened these crystal shards that fell and trapped Doji, and one of them hit Phoenix's mask and like kind of broke it when Gingka showed up. And Gingka looked shocked, and like the episode ended off there on a cliffhanger, even though there's enough evidence there to know exactly who this is, which admittedly I didn't know at the time, like I said previously, but Doji knows him. He said that he should have finished him off at Koma Village. He's the phoenix that rises from the ashes. Like, who else could it be? I'm definitely going to give this episode an A grade, and when combined with the previous episode, it's definitely an A tier experience. Like I already said, the battles didn't disappoint. Even if I wasn't necessarily high on Gingka and Reiji's battle, I will say that visually it was amazing. Same with Phoenix versus Doji, which ended up being the best battle of this episode. It was an action-packed battle where Doji finally got to show off all of his true power that he was hiding, and that was scary. Like, imagine if he got to battle more, but then like it wouldn't be that surprising right now. Then I would say that I like Jinga's mirroring strategy for beating Reiji. Like, that's so unique. Overall, the battles in this episode did not disappoint, so this episode is going to get an A for sure. Episode 48, The Truth of Light and Darkness. Alright, so this episode isn't really one that's action-packed. Like, it barely even had a Beyblade battle in it. It's more of a story time type of episode. So you see, after Phoenix's mask fell off and he revealed himself to be Ryu, Jinga's father, they had an emotional moment, saved Yu, met up with Kyoya and Benkei, and basically the whole episode is Ryu explaining himself and like why he took on this Phoenix persona. However, before that, he went through the history of Beyblades, saying that the star meteorite that fell in the Beyblade village, Koma Village, wasn't the only star that fell down to Earth. In a far-off land, another one fell, and the people of that land used the fragment of that star to create an evil top that would be the foundation of El Drago. It absorbed the feelings of people and turned it into dark power to control the world of war. As time passed, El Drago was passed on and the shape would change. At a certain point, their ancestors used the star fragment of a star to combat that power. After this, Pegasus Beyblade barely won against El Drago. El Drago has been known as the Forbidden Bay and was sealed away, while Pegasus, with the right rotation, that became the basis for the Beyblades that they were all using today. So that's the history lesson. Then for Ryu's own story, he was able to survive, but he didn't want anyone to know that he survived because it would be better if the Dark Nebula didn't know that he was alive, like lure him into a false sense of security, He got pushed back from Hoikuto, but Ryu saw it as a good opportunity for Gingka to get stronger. So that's basically what was happening throughout this journey. We got to see Gingka progressively get stronger throughout the story, which is something that he wouldn't have really had access to in Koma Village, and like he wouldn't have had a strong motive to get stronger if he knew that his father was still alive and like he had that sense of security. Around the Koma Village arc, when Gingka passed every test and like built such great bonds with his friends, that's when Ryu knew that Gingka was one of them ones, that he's gonna save the world. And that's when he created his Phoenix identity, sometimes helping and sometimes being an obstacle, like when he broke Jinga's Bay Pointer, but it was all to help Gingka get stronger, which is understandable because in theory, since Gingka almost doubled everyone's Bay Points, then he should be twice as strong. Anyways, after all of this talk about friendship and beating El Drago, it ends with Kyoya getting mad that everyone was forgetting about him because he was up against Ryuga next, and the only way that Gingka Gingka could beat Ryuga was if Kyoya lost. So I understand him getting upset here and like going on this speech about how he overcame challenges as well. Then for the Doji plotline, when he met up with Ryuga, the tables turned. All throughout this Battle Bladers run, Doji was basically telling everyone that they had an expiration date, just for him to have an expiration date, as Ryuga turned on him, broke his Dark Wolf in half, and took his power, his soul, which he thinks will be enough to beat Gingka, meaning that he thinks Kyoya is sort of a joke. So like, come on man, Kyoya, you gotta teach him a little something in the next episode. I'm gonna give this episode a C grade. It's a fine episode and like it's nice to know all of the history and like know what Ryu was even up to, even though I kind of got the sense as the story was going along like, yeah, he was testing him. I already kind of knew this. It's good at providing much needed context to somewhat fill in those holes, which makes it a necessary episode. Like it's not a filler episode, but in terms of entertainment value, this was definitely very low. Kind of like I've been saying for a few of these episodes. If this is what I waited a week for, like had to wait another week just to get another episode, I would be a bit underwhelmed with this episode. It is a very important episode that needs to be there, kind of like when Gingka went to Koma Village and overcame that trial to become stronger, but I gave that episode enough. Absolutely mandatory episodes, but they lack in entertainment value when like I want to be entertained. So that's why I gave this episode a C for at least telling some like good and interesting lore, but in the end I've seen better and I know what's coming up. Episode 49, Fierce Battle, Lion versus Dragon. This episode was basically all battle, so the episode grade basically comes down to how good the battle was. It's Kyoya versus Ryuga, where the winner gets the right to take on Gingka. Both would be really great battles because if it's Gingka versus Ryuga, we get a chance to see Gingka possibly take down this dark power and someone that he's never beaten before. Then if it's Gingka versus Kyoya, then Kyoya finally gets a chance at redemption, as even though like he was the last one standing in that battle royal, he's never really beat Gingka 1v1. And when going through Kyoya's memories and like history with Gingka, that wasn't really highlighted as a win that he cared about. Clearly not, because he still wants to beat Gingka, and the only thing standing in his way of that is his battle with Ryuga. Ryuga already gained more power from Doji, but to make things harder, he destroyed the stadium, forcing them to battle on a terrain that was possibly more advantageous for him, but they went through with the battle anyways, which ended up being a back and forth affair. It was cool how Kyoya was using the rocks from the battlefield that Ryuga created to attack El Drago, and how Ryuga tried to crush Leon into a wall. Like this battle was so unique because like they were both using the stadium or lack thereof to their advantage. Kyoya even got Ryuga to only attack with his power alone, which was such a risky play for Ryuga, but it made the battle feel more legitimate. I like the stylistic clash, like the ultimate defense type against the ultimate attack type, and how Kyoya didn't waver from his strategy, being able to take multiple hits, the most that anyone has ever taken from El Drago. Kyoya pushed him so far to the brink that I believe Kyoya was actually going to win this battle, or at least like maybe tie, until El Drago kind of sensed that it was in danger of losing, so it gave Ryuga more power and kind of turned him into like a beast. It possessed him, and even Ryuga was kind of shocked about like what was happening to him. So like this really is the Forbidden Bay, like for a reason for sure. They both came up with new special moves or like dark moves for this occasion. King Lion Furious Blast Shot, and Ryuga used his new dark move, Dragon Emperor Soaring Destruction, showing how serious this battle was, as they needed a new tactic, new power to try and beat their opponent in this final hit. But in the end, there was no way that Kyoya was beating Ryuga in that state. Like I said, like he probably had this match until Ryuga turned into a beast. That's when he basically lost it. So Kyoya lost and got his energy drained by El Drago. He got his soul taken. And that was all. I'm gonna give this episode an A, definitely. The battle went crazy, and that's really all I have to say for this episode. They used the unique battlefield to their advantage. They had counters for everything, so it was very competitive. There were high stakes, and Kyoya and Gingka actually fist bumped before this battle. Like Kyoya was fighting for revenge on the Dark Nebula, and so that he can get revenge on Gingka from so early on in the series. And that's the sense of urgency that he was blading with, which is why he didn't hold back and ended up using a new special move and was on the brink of actually beating Ryuga possibly. It's just a very intense battle, so this episode is going to get an A for sure. Episode 50, The Furious Final Battle. This is what we've all been waiting for. This episode kicks off the two-part final battle. After Gingka learns of the true nature of battle bladers and how it was only to get fuel for El Drago, he felt terrible because he basically kickstarted El Drago's awakening in the Forbidden Bay arc, and by getting his friends involved, they just got stronger, making them a tastier meal for El Drago. After seeing all of the destruction that El Drago caused and basically putting Hikaru, Tsubasa, and Kyoya in a hospital, taking their soul, he decided that he couldn't put his friends in danger anymore, even after hearing this heartfelt encouragement by his friends talking about how they inspired him. He went to face Ryuga alone physically and decided to carry his friends with him in his heart to keep them out of danger. When he went to Ryuga, he prepared a special stadium in the sky so Gingka wouldn't have access to probably the only thing that could help him beat Ryuga, his friends. They started the battle and Gingka was getting destroyed, that is, until he heard his friends rooting for him. But they weren't just his friends, a bunch of people showed up to watch this final battle, which brought out the sun. That gave Gingka the strength that he needed to counter El Drago and actually damage it a bit. It seemed like Gingka had the upper hand, just like Kyoya had the upper hand for a moment when he battled Ryuga. But just like that time, when El Drago sensed that it was in danger of losing, it gave Ryuga even more dark power, it possessed him, and turned him into even more of a monster, and that's something that Gingka has to deal with in the next episode, while also figuring out what the missing element of his plan was that Ryu was talking about. The episode grade is tough because, by the way it's structured, it's definitely so obviously meant to be a two-part experience. It's not a complete story because the payoff is coming in the next episode. That's how it should really be graded. That's the experience. But I'll give this episode a B because it only really started to get good near the end when Jingka's friends came in and helped him with the battle, which was heartwarming. It was a good reunion of most of the characters that helped Gingka along the way as he goes deeper into this battle and tries to take down El Drago. A decent amount of this episode was spent on setup, understandably so, and it was heartwarming, kind of hyping up Gingka before the final battle. But I just like the action more, which is why this episode gets a B. Episode 51, Blader Spirit. It's the second half of the final showdown. It's here where we learn that Gingka is not fighting against Ryuga anymore. No, he's not the one battling, he's not the one in control. He's getting absorbed by the dark power and cannot control El Drago anymore. Gingka is now fighting against El Drago and the dark power. We learned that El Drago was kind of just like Pegasus in the way that it was created and came to be. But the ones that decided to make it go down the pathway of evil was not the Beyblade itself, but the humans that controlled it and used it for evil, like Doji wanted to use El Drago for. Well, look at how that backfired on Doji. Not even he was higher than the dark power, and right now Ryuga can't control that dark power. Most of this battle is spent with El Drago rampaging and wanting to destroy the world, putting Gingka on the defensive and making him literally hold on for dear life, wondering if he could even beat an opponent like that. However, right when El Drago was about to end Gingka with its dark move, the spirits of Hikaru, Tsubasa, and Kyoya protected him and told him to stand up and gave him advice that you can't fight force with force, and told him to protect their future. And their spirits entered Pegasus, giving it more power, enough to overcome that dark move. It was then when Gingka got an idea. He got a brain blast. He asked everyone for their strength because he wanted to save Ryuga, which shocked everyone. No one was messing with that because Ryuga is evil. But no, Ryuga isn't evil, rather people like Doji are evil, and El Drago, the Beyblade, is evil because of how it was used and shaped in the past. And Gingka explained that if he abandoned a fellow blader, then El Drago wins. That's a dub for the dark power, and it will not feel like a victory against the dark power if they don't take care of one of their own. He wants to beat El Drago, not just for the good guys, but for everyone, because at the end of the day, everyone is a blader and the future should be wide open for everyone. That's some powerful stuff, and this is exactly what Ryu was waiting for Gingka to understand. Gingka only had a 0.03 chance to win, but everyone got behind him and his Pegasus, and he went all out, and he and El Drago even took the battle to outer space, which is so crazy, and they both used their special and dark moves. El Drago used its dark move, Dragon Emperor Soaring Destruction, to counter Gingka's brand new special move, Galaxy Nova, which ended the battle against El Drago. But that wasn't all. Ryuga still had to take back his blader spirit. They fell off the stadium, but surprisingly, Pegasus saved Gingka, and he used Pegasus to save Ryuga from falling, which shocked him, but he was safe because Gingka sees him as a blader and the dark power is separate. After they landed safely, Pegasus disappeared because it used up all of its power and even more to beat the Forbidden Bay. It's gone for now, but for a happy ending and potentially a sequel or another season, maybe Pegasus will come back one day when it's rested its wings and gained enough strength. Gingka saved the world, everyone celebrated him including Hikaru, Tsubasa, and Kyoya after this battle healed them, and they had a happy ending after saying their battle is just beginning. All the way back when Jinga's pointer got broken, he said that the next time he loses will be the time he quits Beyblade, and he absolutely stood on business for sure, going on a big winning streak, never losing for the rest of the season, and of course winning Battle Bladers. This is so clearly an A+ tier episode, and combining it with the previous episode, it's definitely an A tier event, like an A+ conclusion to this season. The battle was absolutely intense and did not disappoint, considering that this is what the whole season was leading up to. I absolutely love how involved Jinga's friends were. While not battling, all of the friends that Gingka made along the way that we saw grow, that we grew attached to and actually cared for, all of them had an important role to play in this crazy final showdown. I also didn't expect Gingka to want to save Ryuga, but the way that it was set up and like how we got to learn about the history of Beyblade, it makes total sense and like kind of creates an avenue for Ryuga to have a happy ending as well, because everyone saved him from this dark power that he just couldn't control. This battle was just so off the charts. It's emotional. I literally cried when Hikaru, Tsubasa, and Kyoya's spirits saved Gingka, and it's just a happy ending. Like it's finally over and everyone is happy again. This finale is an absolute masterclass. It and the show overall really got me to feel emotions, which is kind of rare, but like it accomplished that, and it's just the perfect ending to this season. So it's easily an A tier, A+ tier episode. And that's every episode of Beyblade Metal Fusion rated. I absolutely enjoyed being able to watch this show again, and I enjoyed the journey that it took me on. It started off as somewhat of a light-hearted show, then turned into saving the world from the dark power, and it's such a natural evolution. Like both tones for the show worked, but the transition was seamless, and for the most part, I was really invested in just about every episode, which is really nice to like finally rewatch these episodes again with a notepad, taking down notes and like details that I might have missed or like they just went over my head when I was a kid watching this for the very first time. It feels nice to finally understand this show beyond the power of friendship stuff that they were pushing, like be able to understand the darkness aspect as well. There's so much to love about this season that even though I have not rewatched Metal Masters yet, I made a couple of videos ranking the Beyblade Metal Fight seasons based on nostalgia, and after seeing Fusion now, I feel so bad that I just keep on placing it in second place behind Masters. And while it still very well may like end up being below it when I end up watching Masters again, I've just got to say Fusion is so good. I love the journey that it took me on. I love those humble beginnings. I love how unique it is like in comparison to the other seasons, because it is like introductory in nature and it's fairly grounded in its approach, but it was still an amazing season that you can take some good lessons away from. But yeah, I enjoyed Metal Fusion so much, and I'm looking forward to Metal Masters next, see what that has in store, along with some other Beyblade videos here and there, because there's a lot to discuss just about Metal Fusion alone, like some what ifs, like rankings and such. Like I definitely have more videos planned for Fusion in addition to talking about Masters next at some point. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay strong, stay brutal, because above all else, it's anything to win.
I won't let you down, Bruce. I'll keep fighting. Always.